Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
The internet is full of half-truths and all-out lies. We've all seen them, and many people on social media complaining about it. Here's your chance to show and prove. WorldAfropedia.com is a black-owned and operated encyclopedia. There are several thousand articles, but we need help. We can't uncover all the truth ourselves. So please, join us and become a writer, editor, or blogger for WorldAfropedia.com today. Every little bit counts. We owe it to the future generations to put the truth out there. Visit WorldAfropedia.com, the African-centered encyclopedia, a global database of African knowledge for the purpose of bringing about global African wisdom and understanding. WorldAfropedia.com.
The thing that influenced me the most was history, reading and understanding that black people struggled in history from Africa all the way up to the time that I was living in. It was not a process where people were enslaved and went through that whole thing as victims. That our people had a long, rich, strong history, an intellectual history, a history of struggling from taking over slave ships to strikes to building organizations, and that was a history that was not just a matter of George Washington Carver inventing things with peanuts. And I don't mean to push him down because I think he made a great contribution, but I'm saying that was all that I had learned before that. The only figure who had stood out was Harriet Tubman, and it was Harriet Tubman, George Washington Carver, and Booker T. Washington. That was my whole concept, my whole understanding of black history up until that time. And I really thought that Lincoln freed the slaves. I really thought that the Civil War was fought for slavery. And when I started to see the real picture of what happened to us as a people and really started to analyze what American history was all about, I began to look at things in a whole nother way and to see that, it was a systemized, that this place called America the U.S. of A. had systematically wiped out Indians, had systematically enslaved black people, and then after slavery was officially abolished, that the oppression didn't end. It just changed form.
JoAnne, as she was then known, underwent an awakening that thousands of young Americans, black and white, underwent at the time. As she became more informed, she became a highly charged young person. The next logical step was to become active.
The Context of White Supremacy. Gus T Renegade, Justice, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Friday, May 15th, 2015. So I have been told this is our second study session on the autobiography of Assata Shakur. We are picking up right at the end of chapter 2. That's where we left off last week. She was discussing how black people could appreciate, when she was a child, wanting to prove that black people could appreciate the same things that white people did. Right after that paragraph, that's what we should be picking up for this week. Again, the audio segment that we heard at the beginning, documentary, outstanding documentary, and just another magnificent illustration of the power and brilliance of black journalism. Gil Noble, his documentary on Assata Shakur. It is fantastic. I would highly encourage folks to check it out. With that, we will get started. Again, we are in Chapter 2, right at almost at the conclusion of it. And we will go ahead and get started. Context of White Supremacy, Assata, an autobiography. I was supposed to be a child version of a goodwill ambassador, out to prove that black people were not stupid or dirty or smelly or uncultured. I carried out this mission as best I could to show that I was as good as they were. I never questioned the things they thought were good. White people said classical music was the highest form of music. White people said that ballet was the highest form of dance, and I accepted those things as true. After all, wasn't I as cultured as they were? And everything that they wanted, I wanted. If they wanted poodle jackets, I wanted a poodle jacket. If they wanted a Star of David necklace, I wanted a Star of David necklace. If they wanted a Revlon doll, I wanted a Revlon doll. If they could act snobby, then I could act snobby. I saved my culture, my music, my dancing, the richness of black speech for the times when I was with my own people. I remember how those kids would talk about gelfight fish and matzos. It would never have occurred to me to talk about black-eyed peas and rice or collard greens and ham hocks. I would never have given them an opportunity to ridicule me. Anyway, half the white people thought all we ate was grits and watermelon. In many ways, I was living a double existence. I became interested in television in the 5th or 6th grade. Or rather, I should say that was about the time television started to corrode my brain. You name any stupid show that existed back in those days, and it was probably one of my favorites. Ozzie and Harriet, Leave It to Beaver, Donna Reed, Father Knows Best, Bachelor Father, Lassie, etc. After a while, I wanted to be just like those people on television. After all, they were what families were supposed to be like. Why didn't my mother have freshly baked cookies ready when I came home from school? Why didn't we live in a house with a backyard and a front yard instead of an old apartment? I remember looking at my mother as she cleaned the house in her old raggedy housecoat with her hair in curlers. How disgusting, I would think. Why didn't she clean the house in high heels and shirt-waist dresses like they did on television? I began to resent my chores. The kids on television never had any work to do. All they did was rest their homework, and then they went out to play. They never went to the laundromat or did the shopping. They never had to do the dishes or scrub the floor or empty the garbage. They didn't even have to make their own beds, and the kids on television got everything they wanted. Their parents never said, "I don't have the money, I can't afford it." I had very little sympathy for my mother. It never occurred to me that she worked all day, went to school at night, cooked, cleaned, washed and ironed, raised 2 children, and in her spare time graded tests and papers and wrote her thesis. I was furious with her because she wasn't like Donna Reed. And of course, the commercials took another toll. I wanted everything I saw. My mother always bought brand X. I would be so exasperated when we went shopping. I wanted her to buy Hostess Twinkies and Silver Cup white bread. Instead, she bought whole wheat bread and apples. She would never get good cereals like Sugar Crunchies and Cocoa Puffs. She always bought some stuff that was supposed to be good for us. I thought she was crazy. If Hostess Twinkies were good enough for the kids on TV, then why weren't they good enough for me? But my mother remained unmoved, and I remained disgusted. I was a puppet, and I didn't even know who was pulling the strings. One year, everybody was wearing buttons on their coats. Some had writing on them, and others had pictures of movie stars. I went somewhere with my mother and my aunt, and they asked me if I wanted a button. I picked out one with Elvis Presley on it. All the kids at school thought Elvis Presley was cool. I wore that button religiously all winter, and that summer when I went down south, I went to see one of Elvis Presley's movies. In Wilmington at that time, there was only one movie theater where black people were allowed to go. It was called the Bailey Theater. Once you bought your ticket, you went up a long staircase on the side of the theater to the second balcony, the colored section. Shame on you if you were nearsighted. The movie was like all the rest of Elvis's movies. Forgettable. When it was over, I went downstairs. All the white kids were leaving with pictures of Elvis Presley that they had bought. I started to walk to my grandparents' restaurant on Red Cross Street, but then I turned around and walked back. If the white kids could have a picture of Elvis, then so could I. At least I was going to try. I knew it would be absolutely no use to go to the ticket booth and ask the woman anything. She would most assuredly say no. So I walked right on past her, straight into the white section of the theater. What a surprise it was. It was just like the movies in New York. They had soda machines, a butter popcorn machine, and all kinds of candy and potato chips and things. Upstairs in the colored section, they had some old stale plain popcorn and a few candy bars, and that was it. The moment I walked in, all the action stopped. Everybody's eyes were on me. I walked over to the counter where they were selling the pictures. Before I could open my mouth, the sales girl told me, "You're in the wrong section. Go outside and go up the stairs on the side." "I want to buy a picture of Elvis Presley," I said. "What'd you say again?" she drawled. "I want to buy a picture of Elvis Presley," I repeated. "They don't have any upstairs." "Well, I don't know," she said. "I'll have to get the manager." She said something to the other woman behind the counter and then left. By this time, a crowd had gathered around me. "What's she doing here?" they kept asking each other. "Now she knows better," somebody was saying. "Look, Ma, a colored girl." "You get lost, honey?" "What's she want? Don't they have no pictures in the colored section? What she need with a picture anyway?" The crowd was all around me, gawking. It seemed like the manager would never come. "Can't she read? Don't she know that we don't allow no colored in here? I don't know what it's about. Something about a picture. Came walking right in here bold as day." Finally, the salesgirl came back. A man was with her. All eyes were fixed on the manager. He took one look at me and another at the crowd forming around me. "Give her the picture and get her out of here," he told the salesgirl. Hurriedly, she sold me the picture. "All right, folks, it's all over now. Go on about your business." I took my picture and went prancing out into the daylight. I was feeling good. It seemed funny when I thought about it. The looks on those crackers' faces all puffed up like balloons. I had a good time laughing all the way to my grandparents' restaurant. And of course, the minute I got there, I told everybody what happened. I was just so proud. I took my picture and put it on the back counter right next to the funeral parlor calendar. The picture stayed there a few days until Johnny from the cab stand across the street came and told me that Elvis had said the only thing a black person could do for him was to buy his records and shine his shoes. Quietly, I slid the picture into obscurity, then oblivion. Later, I read that Elvis had given Spiro Agnew a gold-plated .357 Magnum and had volunteered to work for the FBI. Evelyn, my aunt, was the heroine of my childhood. She was always taking me places and exposing me to things, as she called it. She took me to museums. I think we visited just about every museum in the city of New York. She turned me into a real art lover. Before I was 10, I could recognize a Van Gogh on sight, and I knew what Cubism, Surrealism, and abstract expressionism were. Picasso, Gauguin, Van Gogh, and Modigliani were my favorite artists. I didn't know the name of one black artist in those days. Very few, if any, museums exhibited the work of black artists, so I just assumed that black people weren't too good at painting. But I learned about African art from my mother. From the time I can remember, my mother always had African sculptures in the house. It was the only kind she had. I always loved those pieces, and it really annoyed me when I took art history in school and the teacher referred to African art as primitive. In fact, if the art was by anyone else but a white person, it was called primitive art. In addition to museums, Evelyn would take me to see plays and movies, and we would experiment with all kinds of restaurants. We would go to parks, go bicycle riding, and it was Evelyn who gave me my first rowboat lesson. She was very sophisticated and knew all kinds of things. She was right up my alley because I was forever asking all kinds of questions. I wanted to know everything. She would give me a book and say, "Read this," and I would eat up that book like it was ice cream. It was Evelyn who took me to see my first show at the Apollo. We saw Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. I was walking on clouds. After that, as soon as I learned to ride the subway by myself, I went to the daytime shows. If my mother and my aunt had known, they would have had a fit. I guess people wondered what this little girl was doing in the Apollo all by herself, but nobody ever bothered me. I was always pretty lucky that way. Barbara was a little girl who lived next door to us in Queens. She was my main friend and foe for quite a while. One day, I saw her leaving her house wearing a white dress and a little white veil like a bride wears. Everything she had on was white, all the way down to her shoes. She even had a little white Bible in her hands. I thought she was going to be in a Tom Thumb wedding like they have down south. So I went up to her and asked her who she was marrying. She said she was making her first communion. She was Catholic. Well, I became an instant convert. I wanted to wear a white dress and dress up like a bride too. And Catholics even got out early from school on Wednesdays. I raced home to tell my mother. My mother was very permissive where religion was concerned. She gave us carte blanche to be Catholics, Baptists, Methodists, or whatever. So I started going to Mass and to catechism classes on Wednesday. The Catholic Church was like no other church I had ever been to. Down south, I always went to church, but those services were rich with music and emotion. I would sit caught up in the music and watch those people who had got happy or got the spirit jumping around all over the place. I was never holy, but I had liked going to church. In the black churches that I had been in, the air was charged. The music rocked and the preacher preached and sang at the same time. People felt free to do what they needed to do. If they felt like dancing, they danced. If they felt like praying, they prayed. If they felt like screaming, they screamed. And if they felt like crying, they cried. The church was there to give them strength and to get them through the long week ahead of them. Where we lived in Queens, there was no black church. The Catholic Church was different. It was silent and cold. The music was terrible, and you couldn't understand 9/10 of the service. But what fascinated me was the spookiness of it. They had so much weird stuff attached to their religion. When you walked in the door, you had to cross yourself with holy water. Then, before you could sit down, you had to genuflect. And throughout the Mass, you were forever up and down, sitting, standing, and kneeling. And there was so much stuff to learn. The Stations of the Cross, rosary beads, lighting candles, going to confession. It was all so spooky. I just knew that this had to be the real God. The nuns really tripped me out. They walked around with rings on their fingers saying they were married to God. That was really weird, and they could never have children or do it. And people said they had bald heads under their habits. I was simply overwhelmed. The catechism class was nothing like Sunday school. They never told good stories about Jesus, and we never sang, "Yes, Jesus loves me." In catechism class, we learned all about the saints. It seemed like they had 1,000,000 of them. And then there was the Virgin Mary. They made a big deal out of her. They even had us praying to her. I would do it, but that story was always kind of hard for me to swallow. Nothing about the Catholics was simple. They even had different kinds of hell. They had a special one for babies, and then they had one in between, and then they had the show enough hell. They even had 2 kinds of sin. I can still hear that nun as if it were yesterday. Now, a venial sin is a sin that's not so bad. It's a white sin, but a mortal sin is terrible. It is a black sin. The night before I was to make my first communion, I had to run to the church with my baptismal certificate. They needed it to prove I had been baptized. My mother had had a hell of a time finding it. I was tickled to be going because they told me to bring it to the convent where the nuns lived. I had been dying to see what it looked like inside. It was just as cold and lifeless as the church. When I gave the nun my baptismal certificate, she looked at it and almost jumped out of her chair. "Oh no, this won't do," she said. "This is not a Catholic baptismal certificate. You weren't really baptized." "What?" I said. "I was too baptized." "No, you weren't," she said. "It's not a Catholic baptism, so it doesn't count. You'll have to be baptized tonight or you can't make your first communion tomorrow." I was not ready for that one. I caught an instant attitude. She was talking about my godparents like they were dirt under her feet. They called my mother and told her she had to come to the church. Then they got these total strangers from somewhere and told me they were supposed to be my godparents and they baptized me. I never saw those people again, and if you ask me their names, I couldn't tell you. I had had a godmother all my life, and here they were telling me she wasn't my godmother because she wasn't Catholic. They really made me mad that day, but I didn't say too much about it. I really wanted to make my first communion. I did, and later my confirmation, but I never looked at them the same. The 6th grade passed along rather uneventfully. There was another black in my class, Gail. We became friendly, but my relationships with the white kids deteriorated even more. They made it pretty evident that they didn't care too much for me, and I made it clear right back that I didn't care for them. The thing I disliked most about them was their assumptions about me. For one thing, they automatically assumed that I was stupid, and they would really act surprised when I showed I had some brains. One of the biggest fights I had was when this kid in my class couldn't find some pen that his father had given him and accused me of stealing it. I waited for him outside the classroom, and as soon as he came out the door, I jumped on him like a crazy person. Some teachers broke us up. "I'm surprised at you," they kept saying. "I never thought you'd act that way." I was usually very quiet and well behaved. They acted like I had jumped on that boy for nothing, and they couldn't understand why I was so angry. As a matter of fact, even I didn't understand. Then, outside of school was a whole nother matter. When I wasn't doing homework or chores, I would go exploring. My bicycle was one of the great loves of my life. I would jump on it and ride all over Queens. Sometimes on Saturdays or Sundays, I would ride all day long, leaving early in the morning and returning as late as I was allowed to. And if I wasn't on my bicycle, I was somewhere playing with my friends. We played everything from house to handball. I played with boys more than with girls because the boys had better games. I loved punchball and handball, anything that involved running. The playground was right across the street from my house, and I took full advantage of everything that was there. I played hopscotch, marbles, and cowboys and Indians. I always wanted to be an Indian and would hide over or under something and leap out shrieking at the top of my lungs. I guess I was unusual in that respect because most of the kids wanted to be cowboys. I was always rough and clumsy, and I played everything as if my life depended on it. Some of the girls didn't like to play with me because they said I was too rough, and I was always excluded from the jump rope sessions. I was too clumsy to jump double dutch, and they didn't even like me to turn because they said I was uneven-handed. But I always had one best friend, and she was always a girl. I had other friends to play with and hang out with, but I always had one special friend that I could really talk to. We would go to the candy store and the movies and places like that, and we would sit and talk for hours about just anything. By the time I reached the 6th grade, I began to idolize and imitate the big kids who went to junior high school. I couldn't wait to grow up. The grown-up world was so exciting, and when you were grown up, you could do anything you wanted to. Besides, I was beginning to feel different. I was beginning to be interested in boys. I could have told you in the old days, in the park, or skating down some hill, what it was all about. I could have sat next to you on some stairway and gave you half my bubble gum. And in between the bubbles and the giggles, I could have told you. But we are grown up now, and it is all so complicated when you dig somebody. Now, when I open up my Cracker Jacks, I find no heart-shaped ring, only a puzzle that I don't want to solve.
Chapter 3. It seemed like the middle of the night. Someone was calling me, waking me up. What did they want? Suddenly, I was aware of all kinds of activity. Police, the crackling of walkie-talkies. The place was buzzing. "Here, put this on," one of them said, handing me a bathrobe. "What's going on?" I asked. "You're being moved." "Where am I being moved to?" "You'll find out when you get there." A wheelchair was waiting. I figured they were taking me to jail. There was a caravan of police cars outside the hospital. It looked like I was going to be in a parade again. The ride was pleasant. Just looking at houses and trees and people passing by in cars was good. We arrived at the prison at sunrise, in the middle of nowhere. It was an ugly 2-story brick building. They pushed me up the stairs to the 2nd floor. I was put in a cell with 2 doors. A door of bars was on the inside, and directly outside of that was a heavy metal door with a tiny peephole that I could barely see through. The cell contained a cot with a rough green blanket on it, and a dirty white woolen bench with 100 names scratched into it. Adjacent to the cell was the bathroom, with a sink, a toilet, and a shower. Hanging above the sink was the bottom of a pot or pan. It was supposed to serve as a mirror, but I could barely see myself in it. There was one window covered by 3 thick metal screens facing a parking lot, a field, and, in the distance, a wooded area. I walked around the cell, to the bath, to the window, to the door, back and forth until I had tired myself out. Then I lay down on the cot and wondered what this place was going to be like. Here I was, my first day in prison. In about an hour, a guard unlocked the outside door and asked me if I wanted breakfast. I said yes, and in a few minutes she came back with eggs and bread in a plastic bowl and a metal cup containing something that was supposed to be coffee. The eggs didn't taste too bad. Maybe prison food isn't as bad as they say it is, I remember thinking. I heard voices, and it was clear they weren't police voices. Then the radio came on. Black music. It sounded so good. I looked through the peephole and saw faces, weird and distorted because of the concave glass, but black faces to match the black voices I had heard. "How y'all doing?" I asked. No response. Then I realized how thick the metal door was, so I shouted this time. "How y'all doing?" A chorus of muffled "fines" came back. I was feeling good. Real people were just on the other side of the wall. The guard opened the metal door and handed me some uniforms. Maid's uniforms. Royal blue, white buttons, collars, and cuffs. I kept trying them on until 2 of them fit. Then she gave me a huge cotton slip that looked like a tent dress and a nightgown that looked exactly like the slip. You are entitled to a clean uniform once a week. Once a week? I nearly screeched. They had to be crazy. Behind the guard, through the open door, I could see some of the women standing around. They were all, it seemed, black. They smiled and waved at me. It was so good to see them. It was like a piece of home. "When are you going to unlock me and let me go out there?" I asked, motioning to the other women. The guard looked surprised. "I don't know. You'll have to ask the warden." "Well, when can I see the warden?" I pushed. "I don't know." "Well, why am I being locked in here? Why can't I go out there with the other women?" "I don't know." "Then why can't you let me out?" "We were told you were to remain in your room." "Well, how long am I supposed to stay in here locked up like this?" "I don't know." It was useless. "Would you please tell the warden or the sheriff that I would like to see him?" I requested. The guard locked the door and was gone. The metal door was unlocked again. An ugly, shriveled white woman stood in front of the bars. "My name is Mrs. Buttersworth, and I am the warden of the women's section of the workhouse." She reminded me of a dilapidated horse. "Well, JoAnne, is there something I can do for you?" I didn't like her looks or the tone of her voice, but I decided to ignore that for a moment and get to the business at hand. "When can I be unlocked from this cell and go outside in the big room with the other women?" "Well, I don't know, JoAnne. Why do you want to go out there?" "Well, I don't want to stay in here all day, locked up by myself." "Why, JoAnne? Don't you like your room? It's a very nice room. We had it painted just for you." "That's not the point," I said. "I would like to know when I will be able to be with the other women." "Well, JoAnne, I don't know when you'll be able to come out. You see, we have to keep you in here for your own safety because there are threats on your life." "You know, JoAnne," she said, lowering her voice like she was speaking confidentially, "cop killers are not very popular in correctional institutions." "Have any of the women here made threats against me?" "Well, I don't know, but I'm sure they have." "I'll bet," I said to myself. "Nobody has threatened my life. They just don't want to let me out of here." "Well, JoAnne, the important thing is for you to behave and to cooperate with us so that we'll be able to send a good report to the judge. It's important for our girls to behave like ladies." This woman was making me sick. Did she think I was fool enough to believe that either she or the judge was going to help me in any way? But it was the superior-sounding tinge to her voice that really ticked me off. "Butterworth, is it?" I asked. "What's your first name?" "Why, I never tell my girls my first name." "I'm not one of your girls. I'm a grown woman. Why don't you tell people your first name? Are you ashamed of it?" "No, JoAnne, I'm not ashamed of my name. It's a matter of respect. I am the warden here. My girls call me Mrs. Butterworth, and I call them by their first names." "Well, you haven't done anything for me to respect you for. I give people respect only when they earn it. Since you won't tell me your first name, then I want you to call me by my last name. You can either call me Miss Shakur or Miss Chesimard." "I'm not going to call you by your last name. I'm going to continue calling you JoAnne." "Well, that's okay with me if you can stand me calling you Miss Bitch whenever I see you. I don't give anybody respect when they don't respect me." "Lock the door," she told the guard and walked away. Days passed. Evelyn called the sheriff, the warden. There were 2 wardens in that jail, Butterworth and a man named Cahill. Cahill had all the power, though. Butterworth was only a figurehead. And everybody else. Nothing more could be done outside of going to court. I had little or no feeling in my right arm. I knew I needed physical therapy if I was ever to use it again. I had learned to write with my left hand, but that was no substitute. I needed a more specific diagnosis of exactly what had been damaged before I would know whether or not I would ever use it again, even with physical therapy. Isolation was driving me up the walls. I needed materials to write and to draw, paint, or sketch. All my requests went unheeded. I was permitted nothing, including peanut oil and a small ball to aid movement in my arm. When the jail doctor examined me, I asked him about my arm. Why, we doctors aren't gods, you know. There's nothing anyone can do when someone is paralyzed. But they said I might get better, I protested. Oh, yes, and the physical therapist at Roosevelt Hospital said that some peanut oil might help. Peanut oil? He asked, laughing. That was a good one. I can't write a prescription for that now, can I? My advice to you is to forget about all of that stuff. You don't need any of it. Sometimes in life, we just have to accept things that are unpleasant. You still have one good arm. I kept talking, but I could see that I was wasting my time. He had no intention of even trying to help me. Well, would you at least prescribe some vitamin D? All right, but you really don't need it. Every time they called me to see the doctor after that, I went, reluctantly. He would take my arm out of the sling and move it back and forth about 2 inches. Oh, yes, you're getting better, he would say. I asked about the physical therapy, and he always said there was nothing he could do. Finally, Evelyn went to court. Some of the items we petitioned for were ridiculous. In addition to physical therapy and nerve tests, we asked for peanut oil, a rubber ball, a rubber grip, books, and stuff to draw or paint with. The court finally granted a physical therapist, if we would find one, and pay the bill, but I never got one. It seems that no physical therapist in Middlesex County was willing to come to the prison and treat me, and only a physical therapist from Middlesex County was permitted. But I did get the peanut oil and the grip, and in a short time I had a whole therapy program worked out. I was receiving a lot of mail from all over the country. Most of it came from people I didn't know, mostly militant black people, either in the streets or in prison. I got some hate mail, though, and some letters from religious people who were trying to save my soul. I wasn't able to answer all of those letters because the prison permitted us to write only 2 letters a week, subject to inspection and censorship by the prison authorities. It was hard for me to write anyway. I was also very paranoid about letters. I could not bear the thought of the police, FBI, guards, whoever, reading my letters and getting daily insight on how I was feeling and thinking. But I would like to offer my sincerest apologies to those who were kind enough to write me over the years and who received no answer. I spent my first month at the Middlesex County Workhouse writing. Evelyn had brought some newspaper clippings, and it was obvious that the press was trying to railroad me, to make it seem like I was a monster. According to them, I was a common criminal, just going around shooting down cops for the hell of it. I had to make a statement. I had to talk to my people and let them know what I was about, where I was really coming from. The statement seemed to take forever to write. I wanted to make a tape of it and enlisted Evelyn's help. As my lawyer, she was dead set against it and advised me not to make the tape. But as a black woman living in America, Evelyn understood why it was important and necessary. When the prosecutor found out about the tape, he tried to get her thrown off the case. She was ordered by the court never to bring a tape recorder again when she visited me. I made the tape of To My People on July 4th, 1973, and it was broadcast on many radio stations. Here's what I said. Black brothers, black sisters, I want you to know that I love you, and I hope that somewhere in your hearts you have love for me. My name is Assata Shakur, and I am a revolutionary, a black revolutionary. By that, I mean I have declared war on all the forces that have raped our women, castrated our men, and kept our babies empty-bellied. I have declared war on the rich who prosper on our poverty, the politicians who lie to us with smiling faces, and all the mindless, heartless robots who protect them and their property. I am a black revolutionary, and as such, I am a victim of all the wrath, hatred, and slander that America is capable of. Like all other black revolutionaries, America is trying to lynch me. I am a black revolutionary woman, and because of this, I have been charged with and accused of every alleged crime in which a woman was believed to have participated. The alleged crimes in which only men were supposedly involved, I have been accused of planning. They have plastered pictures alleged to be me in post offices, airports, hotels, police cars, subways, banks, televisions, and newspapers. They have offered over $50,000 in rewards for my capture, and they have issued orders to shoot on sight and shoot to kill. I am a Black revolutionary, and by definition, that makes me a part of the Black Liberation Army. The pigs have used their newspapers and TVs to paint the Black Liberation Army as vicious, brutal, mad dog criminals. They have called us gangsters and gun malls and have compared us to such characters as John Dillinger and Ma Barker. It should be clear, it must be clear to anyone who can think, see, or hear that we are the victims and not the criminals. It should also be clear to us by now who the real criminals are. Nixon and his crime partners have murdered hundreds of third world brothers and sisters in Vietnam, Cambodia, Mozambique, Angola, and South Africa. As was proved by Watergate, the top law enforcement officials in this country are a lying bunch of criminals. The president, 2 attorney generals, the head of the FBI, the head of the CIA, and half the White House staff have been implicated in the Watergate crimes. They call us murderers, but we did not murder over 250 armed Black men, women, and children, or wound thousands of others in the riots they provoked during the 60s. The rulers of this country have always considered their property more important than our lives. They call us murderers, but we were not responsible for the 28 brother inmates and 9 hostages murdered in Attica. They call us murderers, but we did not murder and wound over 30 unarmed Black students at Jackson State or Southern State either. They call us murderers, but we did not murder Martin Luther King Jr., Emmett Till, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, George Jackson, Nat Turner, James Chaney, and countless others. We did not murder by shooting in the back 16-year-old Rita Lloyd, 11-year-old Ricky Bodden, or 10-year-old Clifford Glover. They call us murderers, but we do not control or enforce a system of racism and oppression that systematically murders Black and third world people. Although Black people supposedly comprise about 15% of the total American population, at least 60% of murder victims are Black. For every pig that is killed in the so-called line of duty, there are at least 50 Black people murdered by the police. Black life expectancy is much lower than white, and they do their best to kill us before we are even born. We are burned alive in fire-trapped tenements. Our brothers and sisters OD daily from heroin and methadone. Our babies die from lead poisoning. Millions of Black people have died as a result of indecent medical care. This is murder. But they have got the gall to call us murderers. They call us kidnappers, yet Brother Clark Squire, who is accused along with me of murdering a New Jersey state trooper, was kidnapped on April 2nd, 1969 from our Black community and held on $1 million ransom in the New York Panther 21 conspiracy case. He was acquitted on May 13, 1971, along with all the others, of 156 counts of conspiracy by a jury that took less than 2 hours to deliberate. Brother Squire was innocent, yet he was kidnapped from his community and family. Over 2 years of his life was stolen, but they call us kidnappers. We did not kidnap the thousands of brothers and sisters held captive in America's concentration camps. 90% of the prison population in this country are Black and third world people who can afford neither bail nor lawyers. They call us thieves and bandits. They say we steal, but it was not we who stole millions of Black people from the continent of Africa. We were robbed of our language, of our gods, of our culture, of our human dignity, of our labor, and of our lives. They call us thieves, yet it is not we who rip off billions of dollars every year through tax evasions, illegal price fixing, embezzlement, consumer fraud, bribes, kickbacks, and swindles. They call us bandits, yet every time most Black people pick up our paychecks, we are being robbed. Every time we walk into a store in our neighborhood, we are being held up. And every time we pay our rent, the landlord sticks a gun into our ribs. They call us thieves, but we did not rob and murder millions of Indians by ripping off their homeland, then call ourselves pioneers. They call us bandits, but it is not we who are robbing Africa, Asia, and Latin America of their natural resources and freedom, while the people who live there are sick and starving. The rulers of this country and their flunkies have committed some of the most brutal, vicious crimes in history. They are the bandits. They are the murderers, and they should be treated as such. These maniacs are not fit to judge me, Clark, or any other black person on trial in America. Black people should and inevitably must determine our destinies. Every revolution in history has been accomplished by actions, although words are necessary. We must create shields that protect us and spears that penetrate our enemies. Black people must learn how to struggle by struggling. We must learn by our mistakes. I want to apologize to you, my black brothers and sisters, for being on the New Jersey Turnpike. I should have known better. The Turnpike is a checkpoint where black people are stopped, searched, harassed, and assaulted. Revolutionaries must never be in too much of a hurry or make careless decisions. He who runs when the sun is sleeping will stumble many times. Every time a black freedom fighter is murdered or captured, the pigs try to create the impression that they have quashed the movement, destroyed our forces, and put down the black revolution. The pigs also try to give the impression that 5 or 10 guerrillas are responsible for every revolutionary action carried out in America. This is nonsense. This is absurd. Black revolutionaries do not drop from the moon. We are created by our conditions, shaped by our oppression. We are being manufactured in droves in the ghetto streets, places like Attica, San Quentin, Bedford Hills, Leavenworth, and Sing Sing. They are turning out thousands of us. Many jobless black veterans and welfare mothers are joining our ranks. Brothers and sisters from all walks of life who are tired of suffering passively make up the BLA. There is and always will be, until every black man, woman, and child is free, a Black Liberation Army. The main function of the Black Liberation Army at this time is to create good examples, to struggle for black freedom, and to prepare for the future. We must defend ourselves and let no one disrespect us. We must gain our liberation by any means necessary. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. In the spirit of Ronald Carter, William Christmas, Mark Clark, Mark Essex, Frank Heavy Fields, Woody Changa Olugbala Green, Fred Hampton, Lil Bobby Hutton, George Jackson, Jonathan Jackson, James McLean, Harold Russell, Zaid Malik Shakur, Anthony Kumu Olugbala White. We must fight on. The workhouse had a whole heap of rules, most of them stupid. No newspapers or magazines were permitted. When I asked why we couldn't read newspapers, they told me that newspapers were inflammatory. Obviously, if a person read in the paper that his or her sister had been raped, he would wait until the rapist came to jail and then do him bodily harm. But, I protested, the other inmates watched television and listened to the radio. I wasn't allowed either. They could receive the same information that way or from a visit from home. In that case, the warden told me, we don't let you read newspapers because they are a fire hazard. One of the saddest rules prohibited children from visiting their mothers in jail. I could see the children waiting outside, looking up at that ugly old building with sad, frustrated faces. Their mothers would run to the only window that faced the parking lot just to get a glimpse of their children. Yelling out of the window was a no-no, but once in a while somebody would get carried away. Sometimes their frantic screams went unheard. Gradually, I began to know the women. They were all very kind to me and treated me like a sister. They laughed like hell when I told them that I was supposedly being protected from them. Those first days, before I had really learned to maneuver with one hand, they did whatever they could to make things easier for me. They volunteered to iron my uniforms and sneak them into the laundry to be washed more than once a week. When they told me their charges and the time they were doing, I couldn't believe it. Quite a few of them were doing time for the numbers, either 6 months or a year. In New York, doing time for number running was practically unheard of, and it certainly didn't get 6 months or a year. Everybody in the world knows that the numbers business keeps the cops fat. These women hadn't hurt anybody or stolen anything, yet they were sitting in jail, probably busted by the same cops that they paid off. Their only crime was competing with the state lottery. Most of them had already been sentenced. If the sentence was less than a year, time was served in the county jail rather than in the state penitentiary. If I had expected to find so-called hard criminals or big-time female gangsters or gun malls in the workhouse, I would have been sadly disappointed. The rest of the women who weren't doing time for some numbers were in for some form of petty theft, like shoplifting or passing bad checks. Most of the sisters were on welfare, and all of them had been barely able to make ends meet. The courts had shown no mercy. They brought in this sister shortly after I arrived who was 8 months pregnant and had been sentenced to a month for shoplifting something that cost less than $20. Later, a middle-aged sister began coming to the workhouse on the weekends. She worked during the week and served her 6-month sentence for drunk driving on weekends. Knowing that white women with the same charges would never have received such a sentence, I thought it was harsh. But I didn't realize how harsh until she told me that she had been arrested for drunk driving in the driveway of her own house. She hadn't even been on a public road. She also told me that the cops had arrested her because they didn't like the way she talked to them. In that jail, it was nothing to see a woman brought in all beat up. In some cases, the only charge was resisting arrest. A Puerto Rican sister was brought in one night. She had been so badly beaten by the police that the matron on duty didn't want to admit her. "I don't want her dying on my shift," she kept saying. It was days before this sister was able to get out of bed. In spite of it all, those sisters kept the place jumping. They told all kinds of funny stories about their lives, things they had seen and experienced. Some had a natural knack for comedy. What amazed me was the way they told the saddest stories in the world and made everybody laugh about them. "Girl, that nigga was always in my pocketbook stealing money. And all he did was blow it at the racetracks. Girl, that man spent so much money on the racetracks, he made me wish I was a horse. One day I fixed his ass, though. I was sick and tired of his mess. Betcha he won't go in nobody's pocketbook no time soon. I put a mousetrap in that sucker. Girl, you should have seen that nigga howl." My husband and me, we used to fight like cats and dogs, and he was as jealous as the day is long. Child, we went to this bar this night, and this nigga got all high and started thinking I was messing around with some dude at the bar. As soon as we got outside, boy, he jumped on me like a gorilla jumps on a banana. Don't you know, that man hit me so hard, he knocked my teeth straight out of my mouth. "Now hold on a minute," I told that fool. "We can fight later. I ain't got no another $400 to spend on no false teeth." Child, we was drunk as skunks, down on our knees for about an hour looking for those teeth. And when that fool found them, he said the teeth jumped up and tried to bite him. Lord, child, that man is a fool. I could listen to these stories only when the outside door was open. During the day, they had a female sheriff's officer posted outside my cell. When she was there, the door usually stayed open. The whole time I was at that jail, I saw very few white women. The few who did come were there only for a few hours or a day or so before they were bailed out. There was one white woman who was busted on the turnpike with 50 pounds of reefer. Everybody waited to see what her bail would be. Then we found out she had been released on her own recognizance, that is, without bond. To be released on recognizance in the state of New Jersey, one of the requirements is Jersey residence. The woman lived in Vermont. But nobody was really shocked. She was white. I was going crazy in that little cell. The only time they let me out was for visits and to see the so-called doctor. I have always been an active and restless person, and being locked up in that little cage all day drove me wild. I needed to stretch my legs. I started to run around the cell. I would run in this tiny circle until I was exhausted. 2 or 3 days after I started, the warden, Miss Bitch, accompanied by some male guards, visited me. "We hear that you are running around your cell," she said. "You will have to stop this activity at once." "What? Why?" "Because you are disturbing the people downstairs." "What people?" "There's an office underneath you, and you are disturbing the workers." "Are you crazy? They'll just have to be disturbed. I don't run for that long anyhow. If you let me go out into the yard to exercise with the other women, I'll stop running around my cell." "I order you to stop running around your room." I don't remember joining your army. When I join your army, then you can order me around. She left in a huff, and I kept on running. That was the end of that. I have to thank her, though. If she hadn't come and harassed me, I would have probably given up running around that tiny space in a few days. The food in the workhouse was horrible. Actually, it was disgusting. The food there is worse than the food in any jail I have been in since, and that is quite an accomplishment. I would sit and wait for lunch or dinner, hungry as hell, and they would bring me some greenish-brown, iridescent chunks floating around in a watery liquid. Liver stew, they called it, or some lamb fat floating around in some water, which was supposed to be lamb stew. And that nasty-looking, foul-smelling stuff tasted much worse than it looked. The place was infested with flies, and so was the food. The only thing edible was eggs, when they had them, and mashed potatoes. I lived off the nuts and candy I bought from the commissary, and fruit my family brought on visits. Every single day for 1 whole week, they brought us this nasty stuff that was supposed to be ravioli. Well, that was the last straw. We all decided to go on a food strike. I wrote a petition, which everybody signed, and we sent it down to the warden's office. Later, the warden agreed to discuss making the food more edible, but he refused to talk to me. He said the fact that I had referred to the food as slop showed I was unreasonable. The food was better for a few days, and then it reverted to the same old nasty slop. The woman sheriff's officer who guarded me had to be the oldest dumb blonde alive. She played the part to a bust. She was nosy and was the world's biggest gossip. Every time she saw me, she smiled and pretended to be oh so friendly. One day, some workmen were drilling a big hole in the wall to install new electric circuits. Of course, as soon as she came in, the nosy sheriff's officer began asking her questions. "What are they building?" I said, "Haven't you heard? Well, they passed a special law and they're going to execute me. They're building the gas chamber now." "Well," she said indignantly, "well, nobody told me about it." And she rushed off to find out why no one had informed her. The lights were turned off every night at 10. I was lucky because there was a night switch that I controlled in the bathroom adjacent to my cell. I would move the cot so that I was in as much light as possible, and I would read way into the night. When I tired of reading, I'd turn off the light and look out the window. Outside, police patrolled the area. A lot of times, there were 2 police on foot who seemed to be standing around near the parking lot. They carried rifles and shotguns. One night, in my usual condition of boredom, while standing at the window and feeling mischievous, I cried out a bird-like sound in a shriller voice than I could muster. "Eek, eek, eek." The pigs started looking around like crazy. They jerked this way and that way as if someone was behind them. Again I cried, "Eek, eek, eewat, eewat." This time they really jumped around. You would have thought it was World War II and the Japanese were 2 feet away. I waited a while. When they calmed down, in a voice even shriller than before, I cried, "Nai, nai, nai." They pointed their guns and actually walked backward, prepared to fire at anything moving. Then, quite by accident, my metal cup fell to the floor. Well, in a second, they were down on the ground, crawling, holding their rifles. When I saw these fools crawling around on the ground like that, I just couldn't take it anymore. I laughed until I was sick. Great, big, bad police crawling around scared of their own shadows. Every once in a while, I tried it again with different police, and usually the results were similar. But it was never as good as that first night. Because I had a broken clavicle, I had to wear a figure-8 brace around my shoulders. It was made of foam and cotton with a tiny belt buckle fastener on the back, and about half an inch wide. One morning, as I was eating, the guard came in my cell and took it. "You can't have this." "Why?" "Because it contains metal," she replied. "You can't have anything with metal in it." Now, there I was, sitting on a metal cot, drinking out of a metal cup, eating out of a metal bowl, and this policewoman was standing in my face, telling me I couldn't have my brace because of this tiny metal buckle. I raised all the hell I could. But I saw that she was, like she said, like they all say, only following orders. If the prison doctor says you need it, you can have it back. As soon as Dr. Miller came into the workhouse, I asked to see him. Without the brace, my shoulder felt weak and fragile. I could barely hold myself up straight. Don't worry about that old brace, her doctor told me. You don't need that thing anyway. It was all I could do not to kick him in his groin. Luckily, later that week, the bone specialist came out to the hospital to see me. He was a very good doctor and a very kind man. He told the warden in no uncertain terms that I needed my brace, and without it, I could be disfigured. He gave me a lot of encouragement for my hand so that I could regain full use of it. Finally, they returned the brace. It was about that time the miracle started. I was sure now that my hand was coming back to life. I was beginning to be able to tell it to do things, and it would actually respond. Each little bit of progress was a miracle. Being able to touch my pinky with my thumb, to pick up a cup, to hold a pencil, to pinch myself, were feats that took days of practice and exercise to accomplish. And then the day came when I knew I was almost there. After months of trying, I could finally snap my fingers. Whenever anyone came to see me, I would show them my new talents. I felt like a little kid saying, "Look, Mommy, see what I can do?" Finally, a joint conference was arranged between Sundiata and me with Evelyn present. It took place at the workhouse. Sundiata was brought from the New Brunswick jail. I've never been happier to see anyone in my life. It was difficult to talk because the guards were practically sitting in our laps. I couldn't whisper for nothing, and Evelyn kept telling me to lower my voice. We talked about the case and decided that it was politically correct to be tried together. Just seeing Sundiata cooled me outright. I was feeling bad, and I was real self-conscious about how I looked. I had broken out in a horrible rash from the prison soap, and I looked like a lopsided scarecrow with bumps. There is something about Sundiata that exudes calm. From every part of his being, you can sense the presence of a revolutionary spirit and fervor. And his love for black people is so intense that you can almost touch it and hold it in your hand. There's nothing put on about him. He is a real folksy kind of person. Every time I see him, he looks like he belongs on a porch somewhere down in the South, breathing in summer air and bouncing babies off his knee. The truth of the matter is that Sundiata is country. He would deny it to the bitter end, but he is sure enough country. And when he laughs, that giggle laugh of his, it's like a trip to Texas in the backwoods. When the conference ended, I was a different person. I felt much stronger and I didn't feel alone. I didn't know when, but somewhere along the way, I started to collect the metal cups we were given to drink from. At first, I think it was just my slow way of drinking that caused the cups to accumulate. I was none too popular with the guards, especially the men. Most of them hadn't said boo to me, and vice versa, but they hated my guts. To them, I was a cop killer, and they were cops. Something told me to be real careful. They had given me a little table to eat and write on, and at night, before I went to sleep, I pushed the table up next to the bars and stacked the cups precariously on top of it. The bars opened into the cell, and the slightest movement would send the whole stack of cups clanging to the floor. I would push the bench behind the table. In that way, anyone who tried to come in would have to apply some real pressure. I went through this routine every night, feeling slightly foolish, but compelled. One night, in the middle of the night, the cups came crashing down. I immediately awoke to find 4 or 5 male guards standing in the doorway of my cell. I screamed, "What do you want? What are you doing in my cell?" loud enough for someone to hear me. The guards stood in the doorway like they didn't know what to do. Finally, one of them locked the door and said, "We heard a noise, and we came to investigate. We were just checking it out." They weren't even supposed to be in the women's section. The female guard on duty that night, the slimiest one in the prison, was nowhere in sight. After that, no matter what jail I was in, I always found some way to barricade my cell. In prisons, it is not at all uncommon to find a prisoner hanged or burned to death in his cell. No matter how suspicious the circumstances, these deaths were always ruled suicides. They are usually black inmates, considered to be a threat to the orderly running of the prison. They are usually among the most politically aware and socially conscious inmates in the prison. When Eva came to the workhouse, it was something of an event. Usually, she occupied the cell I was in. The rest of the women were housed in 2 open dormitories. The guards didn't know what to do with her. She had been in that jail many times before, and she was known as a hellraiser. Everybody said she was crazy. My first encounter with Eva was when she came over to the bars and sat down outside of my cell and told me she could astro travel. She called it something like astro space projection. I can go anywhere I want to, whenever I want to, she told me. I've just come from Jupiter. How was it? I asked her. Oh, it was fine. They had these cute little people. They were purple with crocodile skin and blue hair. You can go anywhere you want to, she told me. You just have to project yourself. Can you show me how to project myself the hell out of here? Oh, that's easy, she said. I do that all the time. As a matter of fact, I'm not here now. No, I said, that's not good enough. I want to protect my mind and my body out of here. You'll be in jail wherever you go, Eva said. You have a point there, I told her. But I'd rather be in a minimum security prison or on the streets than in the maximum security prison in here. The only difference between here and the streets is that one is maximum security and the other is minimum security. The police patrol our communities just like the guards patrol here. I don't have the faintest idea how it feels to be free. Eva told me she knew how I felt. She had to know. Any black person in America, if they are honest with themselves, have got to come to the conclusion that they don't know what it feels like to be free. We aren't free, politically, economically, or socially. We have very little power over what happens in our lives. In fact, a black person in America isn't even free to walk down the street. Walk down the wrong street, in the wrong neighborhood at night, and you know what happens. Eva and I got on famously. A lot of times I didn't understand what in the world she was talking about, but at times she made so much sense, I wondered if it was really the world that was crazy. She taught me a lot about prison, and she was forever telling some funny story about her life. Eva was a huge sister. She weighed about 300 pounds. She had very dark skin, and her hair was cut short next to her scalp. People who have accepted white European standards of beauty would find her unattractive. But to me, there was something beautiful about her, and I loved to look at her. She is one of the few people that I have met in my life who have the courage to be almost totally honest. Altogether, Eva had spent about 10 years in the Clinton Correctional Facility for Women in New Jersey. She had been there in the old days when women worked out on the farm. She told me how the women were treated, that state troopers would be called in for the slightest disturbance. She was there during a riot at Clinton and had seen state troopers beat the women mercilessly. Once they had beaten a pregnant woman so badly, she lost her baby. Around this time, I started taking my little walks. Staying cooped up in that cage all day was driving me up the wall. So when the guards brought my food, I would walk past them into what was called the day room, where the women ate and watched TV. I would walk first to one dorm, then to the other, and then return to my cell. There was no place I could run to, since there were 2 or 3 locked doors between me and the outside. Most of the guards would nag me to come back into my cell, and after a short time, I would. But none of them got too crazy about it until one day a guard yelled at me, "Get back here! Did you hear me? Get back here!" If there's one thing I can't stand, it's being ordered around. And if there's another thing that makes me go wild, it's for a white person to talk to me in that tone of voice. "You come back here," I told her. "You're so big and bad, I want to see you make me come back in there." She made a move like she was going to grab me. "You put your hands on me, and it's going to be you and me. You lay a hand on me, and I'm going to splatter your brains all over these walls." It's a good thing she didn't try me, though, because she outweighed me by at least 50 pounds, and I was still pretty much the one-armed bandit. But I would have given her a hell of a fight. I was mad and frustrated, and I had already stored up about 2 or 3 months of anger. Anyway, I finally went back into the cell, when I was ready, but her attitude made me defiant. Whenever she opened my cell for anything, I would push past her and walk around for a minute. She would stand in the doorway like she was a door or something, and I would rear back and butt her out of the way. She was as big as a house, but she didn't have one bit of strength. Finally, she called the male guards. I was in one of the dorms talking to the women, wondering why she wasn't bothering me, when about 10 male guards came into the room. "Who is JoAnne Chesimard?" the head guard asked. Nobody said anything. "Which one of you is JoAnne Chesimard?" They looked like they were ready to leap on somebody. Again, no one responded. "All right, I'm going to ask you again. Which one of you is JoAnne Chesimard?" "I'm JoAnne Chesimard," Eva said. Well, when the guards took one look at Eva and saw how big she was, their tone changed immediately. "Miss Chesimard, would you please return to your cell?" One of the guards came from the back and tapped the sergeant on the shoulder. "I know her," he said. "She's not Chesimard." "I am the one you're looking for," I said. I didn't want Eva to get too involved in my madness. "I'll see you sisters later. I've had enough excitement for the moment." I walked past them and went to my cell and opened a book. The next day, the same guard managed to tick me off again. "I don't want any more trouble out of you," she said. "I don't want to have to call the men again." "You can call the National Guard, the militia, the FBI, or anybody else for all I care. You can call your mother if you want to," I told her. As soon as she opened the door for lunch, I pushed right past her. I took my tray, sat down with the other women, and started eating my lunch. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I wanted to see what they were going to do. I had about 3 mouthfuls of food left on my plate when the goon squad came in. "All right, get up and get in your cell." As soon as I finish what I have on my plate. "Now," they ordered. "I only have 2 spoonfuls left." "Now," they beckoned to the female guard. "Remove the prisoner to her cell." She came near me with her hands stretched out. "Don't put your hands on me," I told her. "I'll walk to my cell." "Remove the prisoner to her cell," they ordered. She went to grab my arm, and all at once, the room was in motion. Chairs, tables, cups, trays were flying in the air. Everybody was either running to get out of the way or fighting. The female guard made a wild dash for the door. The male guards jumped on me. I was hitting, kicking, scratching, punching, biting, and I didn't know what all else. They finally managed to get me in my cell and the other women locked in their dormitories. None of the women was seriously injured. I had a few nicks and scratches, but otherwise I was fine. And I felt fine. Some of that anger pent up inside me had been released. One of the guards was wounded. Somehow his face had got cut. He was the same little runt who had sat across from me in the hospital, pointing a shotgun at me and switching the safety on and off, talking about how he liked to kill animals. Nobody knows how he was cut or who cut him, but everybody knows that the hunter got hunted.
Context of White Supremacy. So we are closing in on the end of the 3rd chapter. We'll be picking up the paragraph. It reads, "Later that day, they brought a photographer to photograph the evidence." That's the paragraph right before a big poem. Anywho, Context of White Supremacy. If you would like to share a thought on what you have heard, the number to dial is 760-569-7676. The code is 564-943 pound. Press *6 if you would like to participate. That number again, 760-569-7676. And the code is 564-943 pound. Press *6 if you would like to participate. If you do not want to use your phone, you can access the free Flash phone. It works anywhere in the world. Of course, it's free. It's linked at the Black Talk Radio Network. If you can't find the address, you can put it in right here. It is tiny, TINY.cc/1 race, and that is the number 1. That address again is tiny, TINY.cc/1 www.cc/1 race. And that is the number 1. When you enter that address, look on the left of the page, down at the bottom, you'll see a link that says free flash phone. Click that link. It will open a tiny window on your screen. On the top line, it is a drop-down menu. Pick out the number that I just read, which again is 760-569-7676. On the next line, it will ask for the code. That code again is 564943. And then the final line, it will ask for a name. You can click random keys. You can put in a nickname. If you're comfortable using your real name, that is fine as well. Once you get all that entered, click the green button. It will connect you to the program. You should be able to hear us live. It's the same procedure. If you would like to participate, you'll see the dial pad on your screen. Press *6. Once you do that, press the number 1. We will get you on the air, and you can feel free to share. We will hit the phone lines. Try to get right to your point. You don't have to, feel hurried, but it looks like we have a lot of folks who want to chime in. So share all that you think is important, but just try to make sure that you are mindful that other folks want to share as well. Everyone who dialed in with a hand up, line should be open.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Gus. Good evening to the callers and listeners. This is an excellent book choice. Excellent. I wasn't able to get on the call last week, but I did pick up the book and am following with you. I just wanted to share a couple of observations that I made when she spoke about her affinity towards white people and what they thought were good things, and how she wanted to be just like white people. I think that's where we picked up on page 37. I thought about how Dr. Ani talks about how white people call their music classical, and their style of dance is the best style of dance, is that European standard. And so that stuck out to me. Also, when she was talking about what her mother bought for her, how other people had, other children had things like sugar crunchies and Cocoa Puffs, but her mother cared enough about their nutrition, even though she had very little money, to buy healthy food for her and her family, apples, wheat, bread, and things like that. And I thought that was like the opposite of today, where so many of us in our community have very little money, and that little money that we have, we use it for junk food, because the nutritional foods, which are more expensive, and that's because it's due to the racist economic mutilation and mutation of nutritious foods that, we just don't have as much access to. And I thought that was very interesting as well. Also, when I learned a little bit about Catholicism, I did not know that there were such things as black sins and white sins in their world, but that is the religion of racism, white supremacy, I suppose. And I also thought it brought back memories when she talked about Double Dutch. Double Dutch is a game, you play with 2 ropes. I'm quite sure everybody's seen it, but it's also a rhythmic game. And if you can't turn in rhythm, the person can't jump. So when she said that she was double-handed, I thought that was interesting. And that's like a more of a structured type of activity. But when it came to her playing, she was more of a freestyle type activity. She used to jump, freestyle type of playing activity, jumping off of, jumping out of unknown places and screaming. She wants to be the Indian, and as a child, that's like a revolutionary spirit. When you watch the Indians, they were always trying to defend their land against the white man, and it was just interesting that she took on that role to play. And that's all I had so far. I made some other observations, but I'll let somebody else speak. Thanks for letting me talk. I'll mute my line.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Yeah, this is a great book. I like what she said when she made the comment about a greater confinement. And she had mentioned that all African Americans are in prison. But the thing, just as Millie Silver mentioned that we're in greater confinement, she makes that observation because it shows, when you're doing research and when you start hitting on truth time and time again, you know that you're on to something. And it's just for us with regards to being in prison. For me, it's of course, no one wants to be in greater confinement. But for me, being here where we are, it makes it really, really difficult when I think about what we do to each other. I kind of get what they do to us, but it's what we do to each other, in lesser confinement that, makes hell on earth. And that's pretty much it. And I like that her attorney, that she got a chance to make a recording, a statement. And, and I like what she had to say in regards to that statement. And we're all on that path to justice for everybody in the world. And I really like this book. And I'll mute myself. Thank you.
Other folks have comments who have not shared. Your line should be open. Feel free.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
How are you guys? Good evening to the Gafforders. I had a few observations to make in regards to the book. This is a great book, like everyone else has said. I love it. Man, they're breaking all the rules with her, man. As far as jail, even the way they made her from Miranda rights last week was just terrible. The Catholic thing brought me back to memories. I went to Catholic school, and my first time that in high school they had a mass and a communion, and they all got up and they drank out the same cup. And I was like, oh no, this is like disgusting, and I refused. So I had to have my mother come in the next day and turned it to this whole big thing. But yeah, man, it was just the way they did things was just so off me compared to the black church that I was used to. It was just like so boring and dreary. Just terrible. But I love the book. I'm glad that she was able to write this text and put this out for people to get. And I'm a little confused. Is the narrator white? It sounds white to me. It just sounds funny with her reading the book, after coming off of the Malcolm X book with the guy sounding so much like Malcolm X, and the Chris Cowell book with the guy sounding so Texas. And then we have like a white woman reading Assata Shakur's book. It just sounds strange. But other than that, the book is great, and thank you.
For sure. I think our caller, retired firefighter in Florida, he asked about that last week. He also thought it was a white reader. It is a non-white reader, actual listener, Cal's listener, who volunteered to do narration. She is non-white. I cannot vouch. I don't know her personally, but she did say she is non-white, and enjoying the read. Other folks who have comments, feel free.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. It's Karma. I kind of had that bifurcated upbringing from the south to the north, and I just remembered Dr. Francis Cresswell said, "Are you white?" And I'm like, "Wow, no, I'm not." So, I think that's where that accent comes from, going back and forth to both cultures all summer. I don't know. She sounds, I don't know, She sounds black to me. Okay. I think I may have started too far back because I think I was back there where they were talking about the movie theater, and I was struck by the fact that, you know, the black kids were going upstairs and they were getting this stale popcorn. And I always know that most black people don't have any clue how much white people take advantage of us. And that was probably the popcorn left over from the white kids a couple of days ago. They took it upstairs, gave it to the black kids. And the black kids were probably paying twice as much for those seats as the white kids were. And the only reason white people have anything is because they give nothing and they take everything. And most people don't have a clue. They have no clue. They are paying 2 and 3 times as much for everything. So that was one thing. And she is an unapologetic warrior. That's what I love about her. She is absolutely unapologetic warrior. And I know where that attitude comes from. That attitude of hers comes from the fact that you tried to kill me and you missed. That is exactly that attitude. And that's what happens every single time. And my daddy said, if you shoot anybody, you better make sure they're dead, because you're going to have a problem on your hands. The other thing is I also liked hearing about the double Dutch. I'm surprised they didn't use the word. You keep cracking the rope, you're cracking everything. So that was really good. And I think I didn't take my notes in order. So the only thing that I had left was, I should have read this book a long time ago, but the only thing I think I've ever read of hers was Your Boat is Leaking, and that was fascinating if you haven't read that before. That's it. Thank you.
Right on. You were not too far back. The movie theater portion was from this week's reading, so you were right on time. Other folks who have not been able to comment yet, did you have anything you wanted to add as well?
Greetings, everyone. A lot of action in her time in greater confinement, and it's still early. I can see, based on what she was being accused of, and of course the word spreading that things weren't going to probably not get any calmer for her during that period of time. So I can see why the inevitable took place, where Ms. Shakur thankfully ended up being able to escape. Earlier in the readings today, what I was impressed by, and I'm not surprised of her, is how at an early age, I believe it was talking about how she was introduced to reading, and the reading that I'm talking about is reading outside of having to being a requirement in school or something like that. The word I think she made some kind of phrase about it, eating like eating ice cream or something. In other words, it was something that was enjoyable at the same time you were learning at the same time, and that's a very, very important point. And when a person gets that type of mental nourishment, it becomes very helpful to that person throughout their lives. Because for one thing, you never close the book on learning. For one thing, when you become an avid reader, and most of non-white people who are less confused have similar paths, and so that point in the book, I think, was very, very important for her to share for the readers.
yeah, that's basically it right now that I have. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Retired firefighter. Anybody else that we missed? Anybody who's with us on the line who hasn't been able to comment? Did you have anything you wanted to get in? Did we miss anybody? Well, so we got everybody, at least for right now. We have about 20 minutes before we get to the second audio portion. So if you have not commented and think you have something you want to share, or if you have additional comments, we got about 20 minutes for folks to get all that in. Briefly, you had to endure a few moments of Gus reading this week. I think I might have misplaced one of the audio files of our reader finishing up chapter 2, but we didn't miss any of the book. All there on point. Moving forward. I put it out last week. She does not capitalize the letter I at any point in the book. So like I referencing herself. She also uses 3 Ks when spelling America, and she uses a K instead of a C when she spells the word court, as in going to court with a K. I thought it was important that she referenced herself as a victim. I know that pops up consistently, not too frequently on the cows, but I have bumped into it quite a bit. Just in my time talking about white supremacy, where many black people are resistant to the notion of thinking of themselves as victims, and they feel like it's kind of taken a defeatist attitude. And I think myself, Dr. Welsing, Mr. Fuller have kind of pointed out consistently that it's just recognizing that us have been harmed, and that we want to be very clear about who the perpetrators are and who are the folks who have been wronged, victimized. But I definitely appreciated that. I thought it was relevant with everything that's been discussed for about the last year and a half. She said for every pig that is killed in the so-called line of duty, there are at least 50 black people murdered by the police. Don't know where she got those statistics from, since this is from roughly 40 years ago, and they claim to have no reliable information on police shootings currently. One of our listeners consistently points out the hypocrisy of racists, white folks consistently referring to black people as criminals and looters and rioters and, whatever other, we're the dregs of society, when it is white folks, racists, who are the biggest gangsters, terrorists on the planet. He consistently points out the absurdity of that, really, of them trying to brand us as criminals. And I thought she did a really great job elaborating on what he has shared with us quite a few times down through the years. Also in reference to Boston, she pointed out the lead poisoning that has come up with Mr. Freddie Gray and black people residing in the area of Boston in general. Page 52, my goodness. And this is a part of the audio recording that was leaked. And again, if you want additional information, Evelyn Williams, Assata Shakur's aunt, she wrote her own book that details a lot of extra info about this case, as well as her efforts to help Assata Shakur's grandparents try to maintain their land, lakefront property down in North Carolina, or waterfront property. But the book is Inadmissible Evidence, and I believe whites retaliated against Evelyn Williams eventually. I could be in error, but that is a theory, at least, that I have. If you do some digging about what has happened with Evelyn Williams' career. Moving forward, anybody on the line here? Just yes, we'll do it. Let's see if we can be codified here. So just yes. So the question: do you know who Mark Essex is? When she did her roll call to kind of end her audio recording, does anybody know who Mark Essex is? If you could just say yes, see if we can be codified. Any yeses? No yeses. Might be a homework assignment if folks are interested. We have talked about Mark Essex on this program before. Gus specifically, Gil Scott-Heron has a song, more than one actually, where he mentions Mark Essex, and we have had a guest on the program. He has a whole chapter in his book talking about Mark Essex, if folks want to do some homework. I didn't know all the names of the people she did the roll call for either, but Mark Essex immediately stood out for me. I'll ask my question later. When she mentioned some of the stories that the black females would tell, I was struck by the overwhelming blackness. It reminded me of Cynthia McKinney's letter when she went to deliver supplies to the folks in Palestine, and she was incarcerated. I think she was taken to a prison in the area of the world known as Israel, and she talked about how overwhelmingly black it was, if folks remember that letter, but it reminded me of that, and her talking about all of these incarcerated, confined black females. But when she talked about some of the stories that they would tell of being abused by a black male and all that, it just reminded me of Mr. Fuller. First time, last time. That should be a strict part of the counter-racist code and established early in any attempted partnership, male-female. First time, last time. When she talked about the disparities, I thought that was so telling for so many reasons. When she talked about this white woman with, you talk about reefer madness, 50 pounds of cannabis, and she's released on her own recognizance. Like, wow. Hashtag criming while white. White people know what this is for years. I appreciated them being informed about it as well. Black self-respect, her standing up to Miss Butterworth later on, and not just, letting them say anything to her or talk to her any kind of way. I thought that was really great. Even reminded me of some of her grandparents talking about how this from last week, when she talked about how they demanded black self-respect, and that you look white people in the eye and that you speak up and you not mumble. It reminded me so much of that, and just I thought that was black self-respect on display. Fantastic. Her passage on page 59. I know some of the incidents that people have been talking about in the Missouri area. Pagedale, Kimberly Randall King, black female. She was suspiciously found hanging in a jail cell in Missouri. This was just a few weeks after Michael Brown Jr. was shot and killed. But this is an all the time thing. Black people mysteriously dying behind bars, and I really appreciated the way that she put it together on page 59, where she said, in prisons, it's not at all uncommon to find a prisoner hanged or burned to death in his or her cell. No matter how suspicious the circumstances, these deaths are always ruled suicides. They are usually black inmates considered to be a threat to the orderly running of the prison. They are usually among the most politically aware and socially conscious inmates in the prison. I am sure that continues today. The last thing I will get in, you don't have to respond if, folks don't find this to be particularly... I think we got a Christianity mention this week, because I think that came up last week, so that's definitely one if folks want to comment on, because I think folks were kind of on the lookout, because that tends to be a big theme in a lot of the books that we've read. But that did come up this week, so if folks want to respond to that. And then on page 52, she says... And again, I just want to appreciate her codification. I didn't even get to read it. On page 52, there are two things. Number one, oh my goodness. Someone said soldier. This right here is an illustration of a black female attempting to be a professional, codified, counter-racist soldier. Wow. Underlined, bold-face print. You got that last week when she was in the hospital after having been shot. She doesn't say anything, even when the black nurse comes in, because I don't know. You might be, they might have coerced you to go and snitch and tell them whatever I tell you. So I got to be codified. No secrets. Anything that you do not want to be revealed, you don't share with anyone. That's being codified. We got another brilliant illustration this week on page 52, where she says, this is in her recording that was released. She's talking to black people. I want to apologize to you, my brothers and sisters, for being on the New Jersey Turnpike. I should have known better. The Turnpike is a checkpoint where black people are stopped, searched, harassed, and assaulted. Revolutionaries must never be in too much of a hurry or make careless decisions. He who runs when the sun is sleeping will stumble many times. Wow. Counter-racist codification. What a brilliant illustration, in my opinion. The question that I was going to ask too, and this will be my last comment, before you get to that passage, on page 52, she says, Black people must learn how to struggle by struggling. I was not sure what that meant. It sounds a little abstract, maybe even on the rhetoric-y side. I'm not sure. I was curious what other people thought about that. If you think that's interesting, but if folks have comments on the Christianity piece, the sentence I just read from 52, Black people must learn how to struggle by struggling, or other things you want to talk about, we got about 11 minutes left. Feel free.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
In my opinion, of course I could be wrong, is we have to do it by doing it. There's no shortcut. There are no shortcuts. That's what, in my opinion, that's what that means. And with regards to, I like what you said with regards to codification. But what happens is, in my opinion, the worst thing that happens is like show-offism that Melissa talks about, and that's how she does it beautifully, codification, but we still are tripping each other up with show-offism and stuff like that. She's a very, very, very good person to learn by. But we still have to we don't set up traps for we're testing our brother and sister or white people. We don't set up traps for our people. We don't set up any kind of traps like that for our people. And if, like, for instance, you have to talk to the black nurse, and like she had to talk to the black nurse, and she had to eventually let down her guard. And of course, after the black nurse left, they went in and they were the police went in and they were questioning her, just like she should not let down her guard when she was talking about going on a turnpike. You don't become an informant for these people. Like you said, don't help them in that way. You don't help them. You don't become an informant. You don't make sure that that your things, that you're doing things straight and uptight, and let them. If they have to set you up and have people lying, then that's what they're going to have to do. Don't go in. Try your best not to, because I know I got set up, and white people let me down big time. Trying to show off and play games, but it's just like I don't know. I don't know. I like what she had did, but to me, we don't put ourselves, like she said, you don't put yourself in a trap. You don't put yourself in a trap being a nurse. You don't have to report to them. We have to get ourselves out of these traps that we put ourselves in. That's it. Thank you.
Can I be heard?
May I be heard?
The lady can go before me.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to briefly comment. On page 60, I noticed that Clinton Correctional Facility for Women in New Jersey. Clinton Correctional Facility is in small letters, as well as New Jersey. Regarding the Christianity thing, I did make some notes about that. I thought that it was very interesting how she's pointed out how they had all these different saints and how much they worshipped Mary. And I thought it, because I know she's in Cuba now. And, she's learned a lot, I'm quite sure, about what the Catholicism is about. And I thought it would be interesting to know how she felt when she realized that all of those Catholic saints are just another manifestation of the African Orishas in the Yoruba religion. And with regard to the nuns and telling her that her baptismal wasn't good enough. As they were telling her that, whatever she did you know, you have to do this our way. It's not, you are not a religious person. You will not be able to be accepted by anybody or anything unless you do things our way. You know, and like I said earlier, that's like the religion of white supremacy. And I've often seen, I saw a little girl last week dressed up for her first communion, and it's amazing how they program these children in this white, this purity, and setting them up for marriage and their rituals, and how she wanted to be just like that. And in addition to that, how her mother told her, you know, do whatever you want to do. You know, she gave her the freedom to explore. And it's almost as if she had to find the truth for herself by going through all these, you know, her Southern roots, and her seeing the whiteness of the Catholicism, how she was attracted to the whiteness of the Catholicism. That's all I have for now.
Yes. Greetings again. With the Christianity part, religious part, I think she was, to me, she was accurate in her quote unquote ignorance of what was going on, because I've had similar thoughts when I first came across the form of Christianity, which is called Catholicism. You know, when I was into that type of thing, religious wise, and I noticed that, I think, well, to me, it appears that in areas that are large populated areas, where you have more of a variety of different versions of Christianity, whereas in smaller rural areas with non-white black people, it's probably like Baptist or some sort of even more social activity where music is being played and people are dancing around, like she was talking about, and also getting emotional. And when I came across quote-unquote non-white black people with Catholicism, it wasn't until I was in college. Didn't know that we quote-unquote got down like that when it came to religion. The phrase about when she used the word struggle twice, it may be some sort of catchphrase to kind of like inspire, no matter how hard the task is. Hey, you still gotta keep going. You know, something like that is what comes to my mind. I thought the I don't know if it was in the form of a letter or I think you said it was a recording. I thought it was very codified. I thought it was very codified also. I liked her technique on how she very skillfully was able to turn around the lies of the racist white supremacists and put in our realities and realities to facts that she was familiar with by being involved into the means to attempting to practice counter racism during that time in her younger life, and I think she was very skillful and very accurate on how she was able to take those lives and turn them into, you know, realities, and also some instances where actual facts of what she was stating actually was happening. And she was very consistent with that, and that was, you know, I really liked that. I really liked that particular segment, and when she made that recording. Thank you. One more thing that the names, most of the names are familiar with, but for some reason I'm not familiar with Mark Essex. Thank you.
Other person have something brief you can get in about 60 seconds.
Sure, I'll give it a shot.
Sorry.
Well, I said she was saved somewhat by the fact that her mother gave her, what did she say, carte blanche to be Catholic, Baptist, Methodist. Her mother really didn't put any importance on religion, apparently. And so, Ms. Shakur didn't take it very seriously either. Actually, the only thing her mother had was African art. That's it. That's all her mother put in her as important. Just African art.
Right on. Unless Thomas in New York, can you finish up in like 30 seconds?
Oh yeah, I just looked up Mark Essex, man. Wow, man, he shot the brother 200-something times. Wow, if the crimes they say he committed, I mean, they set the Marines in after him. I mean, I got to do some more research, but man, thanks for adding that one in. I looked him up, and I'm really impressed with him.
Right on. Has been brought up before in the archives. That is one I would say. That's why when folks are so quick to call black people chumps and cowards and haven't done anything and blah, 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 like, man, like, we don't give me credit for Assata. We don't get any credit for Assata Shakur. We don't get any credit for Mark Essex. Like, it's tons of... But anyway, we will continue. Glad folks looked it up, Mark Essex. Moving forward, we are still right at the end of Chapter 3 for me. This is the end of, or I guess specifically like page 60... Is it 64? I got pulled down a little bit, but for me, it's kind of the end of 62. Sorry about that. Page 62 is what we're picking up at. Again, it's later that day, they brought a photographer to photograph the evidence. Picking up Context of White Supremacy, Assata, an autobiography, audio segment number 2.
Later that day, they bought a photographer to photograph the evidence. The local newspaper reported a riot at the workhouse. Some police and the sheriff came around and searched the jail. They said they were looking for the weapon that had cut the guard. They didn't find anything. That night, they came and got Eva. They took her to the Vroom building, the New Jersey hospital for the criminally insane. She spent about 3 weeks there before she came back. The night she left, I felt sad and guilty. Here I had got her caught up in my madness. I was sitting and thinking about her, so I sat down and wrote this poem. Rhinoceros woman, who nobody wants and everybody used. They say you're crazy, 'cause you're not crazy enough to kneel when told to kneel. Hey, big woman, with scars on the head and scars on the heart that never seem to heal. I saw your light, and it was shining. You gave them love, they gave you shit. You gave them you, they gave you Hollywood. They purr at you, 'cause you know how to roar, and back it up with realness. Rhinoceros woman, big mama in a little world. You closed your eyes and neon spun inside your head, 'cause it was dark outside. You read your Bible, but God never came. Your daddy would have loved you, but what would the neighbors say? They hate you, mama, 'cause you expose their madness and their cruelty. They can see in your eyes 1,000 nightmares that they have made come true. Black woman. Bad woman. Wear your bigness on your heart like a badge, 'cause you done earned it. Strong woman. Amazon. Wear your scars like jewelry, 'cause they were bought with blood. They call you mad, and almost had you believing their shit. They called you ugly, and you hid yourself behind yourself and wallowed in their shame. Rhinoceros woman. The world is blind and sleight of mind, and cannot see how beautiful you are. I saw your light, and it was shining. Most of the women benefited from the riot, though. Over the next few days, almost everybody was released or sent to some kind of program. The jail was practically empty. It's strange how things work. When it suits the government's interests, they put people in jail for rioting, and when it suits their interests, they let them out of jail for the same thing. Afterward, the outer door to my cage remained shut at all times. There was no great deprivation, since it had remained closed most of the time before anyway. One day, they brought me a big bushel of string beans. They grew a lot of their food at the workhouse. The men worked in the field. Here, we want you to snap these string beans. How much are you going to pay me? I asked. We don't pay no inmate nothing, but if you snap these beans, we'll let your door stay open while you snap them. I don't work for nothing. I ain't going to be no slave for nobody. Don't you know that slavery was outlawed? No, the guard said. You're wrong. Slavery was outlawed with the exception of prisons. Slavery is illegal in prisons. I looked it up, and sure enough, she was right. The 13th Amendment to the Constitution says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Well, that explained a lot of things. That explained why jails and prisons all over the country are filled to the brim with Black and Third World people. Why so many Black people can't find a job on the streets and are forced to survive the best way they know how. Once you're in prison, there are plenty of jobs, and if you don't want to work, they beat you up and throw you in a hole. If every state had to pay workers to do jobs that prisoners are forced to do, their salaries would amount to billions. License plates alone would amount to millions. When Jimmy Carter was the governor of Georgia, he brought a Black woman from prison to clean the state house and babysit for Amy. Prisons are profitable business. They are a way of legally perpetuating slavery. In every state, more and more prisons are being built, and even more are on the drawing board. Who are they for? They certainly aren't planning to put white people in them. Prisons are part of this government's genocidal war against Black and Third World people. On July 19, 1973, I was taken to New York to be arraigned on a Queens bank robbery indictment in Brooklyn federal court. The trip was like a surrealistic cartoon. There must have been at least 12 cars in the procession, and a New Jersey State Trooper's car was stationed at every exit on the turnpike. All the cars had lights on and sirens going. A helicopter trailed us, and the pigs in the car I was in were comical. At every point, they said something like, "At least we got to the turnpike. At least we got to the bridge. At least we got to New York. At least we made it to the court." Whenever they passed a police car, they waved and sometimes raised their fists. When the Jersey police were replaced by New York police at the bridge to Staten Island, they shook hands and gave each other the power sign. They even called each other brother. "This is my brother officer, so-and-so." They acted like they were on some dangerous mission inside Russia. They were actually afraid. White people's fear of Black people with guns will never cease to amaze me. Probably it's because they think about what they would do were they in our place. Especially the police, who have done so much dirt to Black people. Their guilty conscience tells them to be afraid. When Black people seriously organize and take up arms to fight for our liberation, there will be a lot of white people who will drop dead from no other reason than their own guilt and fear. In September, I was moved from the workhouse and entombed in the basement of the Middlesex County Jail, allegedly because of the jail's proximity to the Middlesex County Courthouse, where the New Jersey trial was scheduled to begin on October 1st. I was the first and last woman ever imprisoned there. It has always been a men's jail. When I arrived, I was given a dirty, scratchy horse blanket and one sheet. Thinking they had made a mistake, I asked for another sheet. "That's all you get," they told me. "I can't sleep with that filthy thing over me. I need another sheet." "Sorry." "Why am I only allowed one sheet?" "That's all the men get. We only give one because they might hang themselves." "They can hang themselves as easily with one sheet as they can with two," I reasoned. "Sorry." For me to sleep on that filthy thing with one sheet was out of the question. I hooped, hollered, demanded they call my lawyer, and told the guard the next time she came into my cage, I was going to wrap the sheet around her neck. Finally, she gave me another sheet. If I wrote 100 pages describing the basement of the Middlesex County Jail, It would be impossible for you to visualize it. It was a big, grayish, pukey, greenish cell. The ceiling was covered with all kinds of pipes, some small, some huge, some dry, some leaky. There was no natural light, and the jailers refused to open the small windows located near the ceilings. The average temperature was 95 degrees. It was infested with ants and centipedes. I had never seen a centipede before, and they scared me to death. They were huge albino monsters, and they crawled all over me. Female guards were stationed at the door of my cell 24 hours a day. Their job was to sit there and look in the cell at me. They could see every move I made. The first day I moved the bed against the wall, away from the guard surveillance so that I could have a little privacy while I was sleeping. The guards ordered me to move the bed into the middle of the floor. I refused. The next day, the workmen nailed the bed to the floor in the center of the cell. They even peeked through the window in the bathroom when I was on the toilet or taking a shower. When I covered the peephole with a towel or a uniform, they ordered me to remove it and threatened to take away all the towels and uniforms if I continued covering the window. I didn't refuse, I simply ignored them. After a while, they gave up. A month later, one of the sergeants told me that I was permitted to cover the window when I used the bathroom, but only for 3 minutes. There were 12 4-foot-long fluorescent light bulbs in the cage that were blinding. When I got ready to go to sleep that first night, I asked the guard to turn off the lights. She refused. "I can't see you if the light isn't on." "How in the world can you miss me? You can see everything in the cell." "Sorry." They kept me under those blinding lights for days. I felt like I was going blind. I was seeing everything in doubles and triples. When Evelyn, my lawyer, came to see me, I complained. Finally, after Evelyn accused them of torture, they turned the lights off at 11. But every 10 or 15 minutes, they would shine a huge floodlight into the cell. Then the trial started. First, the motions were argued. Practically all of our motions were denied. All the prosecutions were granted. Then the jury selection began before Judge John E. Bachman. When they brought in the first jury panel, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. There were only a few blacks speckled here and there, and the panel looked more like a lynch mob than a jury. Most of the jurors openly glared at us, as if they would kill us if they could. Half said they thought we were guilty. The other half, although they didn't say it right out, answered questions like they believed more or less that we probably were guilty. I was convinced some of them deliberately lied just to get on the jury and convict us. Most of the black people excused themselves on the grounds of hardship. They had children, families, jobs, and simply could not afford to be on a lengthy jury trial. If ever there were a case of the blues, I had it. "Do something," I kept telling the lawyers. "Do something." "What can we do?" the lawyers would answer. "We're doing the best we can." It was true, but I just could not accept it. This was my life they were talking about. I must have bugged the lawyers to death. "Object to this, object to that," I would tell them. "Our objection is already on the record." "We'll object again anyway." I was outraged, trapped, and helpless. Whenever a juror said something that revealed out-and-out prejudice, the judge would try to clean it up. Poor Ray Brown, one of the defense lawyers, caught most of my fire. "I want you to object." "On what basis?" he would ask. "Don't you see it? The judge is asking leading questions." But the judge is legally allowed to ask leading questions during jury selection. "We'll object anyway." I knew nothing about the law then. I had never seen a trial. I just couldn't understand how the judge could be so blatantly prejudiced in favor of the prosecution, and there was nothing we could do about it. "Why can't y'all be like Perry Mason?" I asked the lawyers jokingly. "Did you ever see Perry Mason defend a black defendant?" Ray Brown asked. Sundiata was a lifesaver. He would try to calm me down and would explain what to expect. Logically, I accepted what he said, but I was still frantic. "We can't just let ourselves be railroaded," I'd say, coming up with one wild idea after another. Sundiata would patiently explain why none of my fantastic ideas would work. After a while of participating in my own legal lynching, I became convinced that Sundiata and I should fire the lawyers and defend ourselves. In that way, we wouldn't be tied to those stupid rules, and we could say anything we wanted to. That's not true, Sundiata told me. Even if you defend yourself, you're still bound by their rules. How am I supposed to know the rules? I'm not a lawyer, and I still have a constitutional right to defend myself. True, but you still have to play according to their rules, or they can bind and gag you. Look at what they did to Bobby Seale. Every time I looked up at the jury box, I'd argue the point again. But I also knew that I didn't know one thing about the law, and it was hard to picture myself actually defending myself. Evelyn was always repeating the old cliche that a person who defends himself has a fool for a lawyer. As we came closer and closer to completing the selection of the jury, I became more and more upset. Then, one day, a kid who couldn't have been more than 20 was being examined as a potential juror. He spilled the beans. The judge asked him if he had an opinion of the case, and he said, "They say she's guilty." The judge questioned him further, and he blurted it all out. The prospective jurors in the jury room were talking about the case, although they had been ordered not to discuss it. The judge asked what they were saying. "They say she's guilty." "Only Miss Chesimard?" the judge asked. "They're saying they're black. They're guilty." At that moment, the lawyers were all on their feet, talking a mile a minute. They demanded a complete investigation of what was going on in the jury room. They wanted the juror asked more questions. They wanted the jurors to whom he talked questioned. The judge immediately realized the boy had opened a can of worms. He did everything he could to avoid opening the can any further, but it had gotten out of his control. He finally agreed to conduct an impartial investigation. This time, when he questioned the jurors, he was very careful to downplay the gravity of what was going on in the jury room. But the other jurors substantiated what the boy had said. Our lawyers filed a motion asking that the jury be selected from another county, because we couldn't get a fair trial in Middlesex. The assignment judge, not Judge Bachman, was to decide the motion. Meanwhile, the trial was stopped. Evelyn told me the decision. The assignment judge had determined that it was in fact true that we couldn't get a fair trial in Middlesex County. The jury was to be picked from Morris County. "Where's that?" I asked Evelyn. She said she hadn't the faintest idea. Then Ray Brown came in. "Where in the world is Morris County?" I asked him. "Well," he said, "I'll tell you. Morris County was almost completely white with very few black people and even fewer Hispanics and Asians." "What does that mean? Are there 10% black people? 5% or what?" "A whole lot fewer." "A jury of your peers," Evelyn said bitterly. "What can we do?" "We just have to wait and see. Can't we get the trial moved somewhere else where there are more black people?" "We can try, but don't get your hopes up too high." I was coming back to earth, and fast. The trial had been postponed for about a month, until January, because they needed more time to secure the jail in Morris County. Maybe, I thought, the lawyers will come up with something by then. I really didn't expect too much, but it seemed like such an obvious trick, such an obvious ploy to ensure that we didn't receive a fair trial by a jury of our peers, that I thought maybe something could be done about it. I was naive in those days. I knew it in theory, but I had not seen enough to accept the fact that there was absolutely no justice whatsoever for black people in America. I still had some hope left, but they had taken something that was supposed to help us and turned it against us. They had used the law to abuse the law. Now, all we have to do, I reasoned, is get the facts and figures and prove that they are trying to deny us a fair trial. How little did I know. Chapter 4. Junior high has its advantages and its disadvantages. It was more impersonal and much more confusing than elementary school, but it gave me the chance to move around and change classes, which I liked. Generally, my subjects bored me, with the exception of English, history, and a newfound love for ceramics. Parsons Junior High School in Queens was mostly white. A lot of black kids had been put into remedial, or what we call dumb classes. It never ceased to amaze me that the kids who were so smart in the street were always in the dumb classes. In junior high, everybody was going with someone. When girls got together to talk, the subject was always boys. Who was cute, who was going with whom was fresh, etc., etc. A cute boy was tall, slim but well built, and usually had light skin. A boy was considered super fine if, in addition to light skin, he had funny colored eyes. Hazel and green eyes were best. If a boy was popular or good at sports, he usually got a play, but in general, the boys we talked about were tall, not too dark, and handsome. One of my earliest admirers was this boy named Joe. He was new in our neighborhood, from down south or somewhere, because everyone said he was country. He was real dark and had a long body with short little legs. He liked me, and in the beginning, I think I kind of liked him too. Then everyone started teasing me, saying he was my boyfriend, and saying he looked like a black frog because his legs were so short. At that age, I was worried to death about what everyone thought of me. I wanted desperately to be one of the pack, and I didn't want anybody to make fun of me. So whenever anybody said I liked Joe, I would deny it to the bitter end and talk about him worse than anybody else. But Joe was very sweet to me. Every time he saw me, he would smile and say something nice. On Valentine's Day, he gave me a big, beautiful valentine and some candy. One day, in the spring, I heard somebody calling my name outside my bedroom window. It was Joe. Quickly, he put a flower on the sill and ran away. Every day after that, he did the same thing. When I'd see him on the street, I would smile. I was really touched by the flowers. Then one day, my mother saw him at the window, putting a flower on the sill. "You tell that boy to stay away from that window," she said. "Now he's putting flowers in the window. The next thing you know, he'll be trying to climb in." But she still thought it was kind of cute. The next thing I knew, she was telling all her friends about it. While I was embarrassed, it also made me think I was cute. No boy had ever paid that much attention before, and I loved it. One day, I was coming from the store and I saw Joe. He started walking beside me. He was kind of shy, and he had never said anything to me except, "You look nice," or "You look pretty." This day, we tried to make conversation as we went along. Then, all of a sudden, he said, "Will you go with me? I want you to be my girl." Somehow, I was shocked. Did he really think I would go with him and ruin my reputation forever? "No," I answered. "No?" he repeated. "Why not?" I didn't know what to say. My tongue became heavy and twisted. I started to stutter. Nothing came out of my mouth. "Why not?" he asked again. I stammered and stuttered, and then, with icy bluntness, I said, "Because you're too black and ugly." I will never forget the look on his face. He looked at me with such cold hatred that I was stunned. I instantly felt sorry for what I had said, but there was no taking it back. He looked at me as if he despised me more than anyone else on the face of the earth. I felt so ugly and dirty and depraved. I was shaking to the bone. For weeks, maybe months afterward, I was haunted by what happened that day, by the snakes that had crawled out of my mouth. The sneering hatred on his face every time I saw him after that made me know there was nothing I could do to make it up to him. There was nothing I could do but change myself. Not for him, but for me. And I did change. After that, I never said black and ugly in the same sentence, and never thought it. Of course, I couldn't undo all the years of self-hatred and brainwashing in that short time, but it was a beginning. And although I still cared too much about what people thought about me, I always tried hard after that to stand on my own 2 feet, to stand by what I felt and thought, and not just be a robot. I didn't always succeed, but I always tried like hell. Mostly, when I was young, the news didn't seem real. In fact, my vision of the world was like a comic strip. In China, they ate fortune cookies, and the men wore braids. In Africa, they lived in huts, wore bones in their noses, and were cannibals. In South America, they wore big hats, slept in the middle of the day, drank a lot of rum, and danced the cha-cha. The only place besides the United States that I could talk about with anything resembling realism was Europe, and my perception of Europe was almost as unreal. The first president I remember was Eisenhower, and even he didn't seem real. My mother said that all he did was play golf. When he gave a speech on TV, we turned the channel, and if he was on all the stations, we turned the TV off. Only the news concerning black people made any impact at all on me, and it seemed that each year the news got worse. The first of the really bad news that I remember was in Montgomery, Alabama. That was when I first heard of Martin Luther King. Rosa Parks had been arrested for refusing to give her seat to a white woman. The black people boycotted the buses. It was a nasty struggle. Black people were harassed and attacked, and if I remember correctly, Martin Luther King's house was bombed. Then came Little Rock. I can still remember those ugly, terrifying white mobs attacking those little children who were close to my own age. When the news about Little Rock came on, you could hear a pin drop at my house. We would all sit there, horrified. Sometimes, afterward, somebody would say something, but usually we would just sit there, lost in our own thoughts. I guess there was nothing to say. And each year I would sit in front of that box, watching my people be attacked by white mobs, being bitten by dogs, beaten and water hosed by police, arrested and murdered. Then the news seemed too real. The older I got, the more I seemed to grow into myself. My mother and stepfather were having all kinds of problems. They were fussing and fighting like cats and dogs. They were like a whole lot of other black people in that respect. They were catching hell every day on their jobs, in society, and they took their frustrations out on each other. To make matters worse, she was a teacher, and he worked in the post office. She had been to college, and he hadn't. As far as I'm concerned, if a black man and woman make a marriage work in America, they've accomplished a miracle, because everything is against them. Just being poor is one of their biggest obstacles. Most of the arguments are about money. It's hard as hell to be loving and caring when you can't pay the bills and you don't know where the next dollar is coming from. And the way they were brought up to think adds insult to injury. It's changing a little bit now, but when I was growing up, every white man on television was able to support his family with no particular strain. There was no need for his wife to work. Her job was to stay at home and take care of the kids. Black people accepted those role models for themselves, even though they had very little to do with the reality of their own existence and survival. While my parents were going through their changes, I was going through mine. I was at the age where I questioned everything. The world was beginning to have more and more impact on me. I was curious about and wanted to experience everything. On weekends, whenever I could, I would take off. I went to the movies or to the library, but my favorite activity was riding subways and buses. I would hop on any subway or bus, ride until I got tired, then get off at any stop and walk around. Sometimes I talked to people or played handball with kids my age. Other times I just walked and looked. I went to all kinds of neighborhoods. White, black, Puerto Rican, Chinatown too, but Harlem was my favorite place. I was fascinated by the street life. I was always trying to figure out what was going on. Everything was so colorful and busy. Men standing on the corner drinking, boys playing basketball, hustlers buzzing up and down the streets, huddling and making deals. It was the land of dream books, kitchenettes, and Johnny Walker Red. I loved the stores, from the market on Park Avenue to the greasy fish joints, to the candy stores that sold penny candy and penny cigarettes, and God knows what else. I would walk and look and think. The world for me then was a big question mark, and the biggest question of all was where I fit in. I was always late getting home and in trouble. It was like I had some kind of disease. I could never make it home on time. I would leave with the best intentions, but as soon as I got out in the street, it was as if I was in a trance. I would forget all about the time until it was too late. And half the time, when I realized that it was getting dark, I didn't even know where I was, much less how to get home. My mother would talk to me, slap me, shake me, punish me, but nothing worked. I was a lost cause. I was running away from home and I didn't even know it. And one thing always led to another. I was turning into a fantastic liar. As soon as I got near home, I began making up lies. When I look back at it now, I know my mother must have wanted to choke me when she heard those far-fetched creations, but at the time, I thought they were brilliant. As the problems in my family intensified, I ran away consciously instead of unconsciously. The first time I ran away, I went to Evelyn's house. She wasn't home, so I fell asleep on the stairway. When she came home, she thought I was some kind of drunken bum, so she walked by me and went to her apartment. I came back the next day, and she talked to me, played shrink and family counselor, and sent me home. It worked for a while, but things were a mess. My mother and I couldn't see eye to eye about anything. and I was just as stubborn and self-willed as she was. And even when I tried to do right, it just seemed like I couldn't do anything that made her happy. And when my mother and stepfather were at each other's throats, it drove me wild. I would simply get my coat and walk out. Some days, I just didn't come back. At times, running away was fun and exciting. At other times, it was miserable, cold, and lonely. The part I dug about it, though, was surviving. Being out there, face to face with the raunchiest side of life, was like living on a roller coaster, everything hurling itself at you at breakneck speed. It was one hell of an education, and when I think about it, I was one lucky child. So many things could have happened to me, and almost did. The first time I ran away, I had just the clothes on my back and very little money. I rode the subway and slept in the hallways until I just couldn't take it anymore. Then I started talking to people. One of the first people I met was this boy named David. I told him that my mother was in the hospital, that I didn't have any other family in New York, and I was scared to stay home alone. He took me home to his mother's house, and we told his mother the same story. She said it was okay for me to spend the night. They lived in the Farragut projects in Brooklyn. David took me out and introduced me to all his friends. We got along fine until nighttime. Then it was war, an all-night wrestling match. When he wasn't attacking me, he was begging and pleading and thinking up 1,000 arguments why I should give him some. I told him I was afraid of getting pregnant. He went and got this big jar of Vaseline and told me that if you used Vaseline, you couldn't get pregnant. I was dumb, but not that dumb. I told him to go to hell, and the wrestling match continued. After a day or two at David's, I was ready to move on. Besides, his mother was getting suspicious. My next new friend was a girl. I couldn't take any more Davids. Tina lived in the Fort Greene section of Brooklyn with her mother and her brother in a brownstone house. It was a rickety old house, and half of it looked like it was condemned. There was nothing whatsoever in that house that was orderly. There were rooms with all kinds of junk in them, stacked almost to the ceiling. Tables, chairs, record players, old radios. I told the same old story to Tina's mother, and she was sweet as pie. I could stay there just as long as I wanted, she said. In fact, she said she just loved to have young people around her. And she wasn't lying either. All day long, there was a procession of people in and out of that house, and most of them were young. When Tina's mother saw that I didn't have any clothes, she said, "We'll just have to take you shopping." I remember thinking how nice she was to be willing to spend money on me, a stranger. The next morning, we went down to Fulton Street. "All right," she told me. "Now I want you to go with Tina into A&S and pick out what you want. I'll be here at the soda place. Just remember where everything is." Off we went, Tina and I. I was as happy as a jaybird. My clothes were kind of on the funky side. When we got inside the store, I started picking up things and got ready to try them on. "Be cool," Tina said. "Don't you know what size you wear?" "Yeah," I said. "Why?" "Let's just get the stuff and get out of here. If you like something, just say so. Don't go picking it up and putting it on and carrying on." "Okay," I said, thinking that she was strange. I liked a plaid kilt with a big safety pin, and a blouse and sweater to match. "This will go with it too," Tina said, pointing to a white blouse. "Now, you just do what I tell you. Step in this." "Step in what?" I said, looking down. "Be cool, fool," Tina whispered. "Just keep looking ahead and help me pull this thing up." She had already got half the skirt up around my thighs. Finally, we got the skirt up and fastened under my own skirt. "All right, let's get out of here," Tina said. "Wait a minute. Roll that skirt up. It's hanging down. And don't look down." I was scared out of my wits, but I started to roll. "Not your skirt, fool," Tina whispered. "The one underneath." Well, I was walking and rolling and trying to look cool. And if anyone had seen me, I know I must have looked like a slapstick comedy. But somehow we made it out of there. I expected the police to come swooping down on us at any moment. Tina's mother was still sitting in the same place sipping soda. "How'd it go?" she asked Tina. "She's okay," Tina said. "She don't know nothing, but she was cool." I felt like fainting. Everybody else's mother I knew would knock you down if they even thought you were stealing. This was surely something new. I just kept staring at Tina's mother. She must have seen me staring at her too, because she told me, "That's right, I steal and my kids steal too. They're trying to take my house from me. They're trying to take everything I got. I gotta survive by the best way I know how. But it ain't really stealing, it's just a discount. You need a discount, high as these stores is. We call it a 5-finger discount." She started laughing. When we got to the house, she said, "All right, let's see all the pretty clothes you got." Tina took the blouses and sweater from somewhere, and I got the skirt from under my skirt. "That's all you got?" "Yeah," Tina said. "She don't know how to do nothing. And we was taking too long." "Y'all didn't get no underwear?" Tina's mother asked. "No." "Well, here," she said, giving us money. "Go to the 5 and Dime and buy some. And I don't want y'all taking nothing, you hear? I didn't raise no nickel and dime store kids. Understand?" "Yes." And we were gone. "We're going to teach you how to deal," Tina said on the way from the store. I just looked at her. My mind was spinning. Then I started to feel glad about it. We had gotten over. We had gotten over tough. The idea of 5-finger discounts was beginning to appeal to me. And it was easy as hell. That night, I dressed up in my new clothes and went with Tina and her brother to hang out. He was on the quiet side and evil-looking, but he turned out to be nice. We were going to a party at the Fort Greene projects. We stopped and bought some French fries and Thunderbird. At the party, Tina introduced me to Tyrone. It was love at first sight. I thought he was the cutest boy I had ever seen. Tyrone was the warlord of the Fort Greene chaplains, and I thought it was just so romantic, like West Side Story. We sat in the hallway, drinking wine and smoking cigarettes. I had smoked before, but I had never drunk any wine. The music was playing, and the lights were down low, and I was feeling good. They were playing those old, slow sides like Wind, Gloria, In the Still of the Night, Sunday Kind of Love. We went inside and started to dance. I was in love and dancing on clouds, whirling around the dance floor. I was whirling and spinning, and all of a sudden, I was outside, holding on to some bench for dear life, drunk as a skunk and sick as a dog. When I was finally able to stand, Tyrone walked me to Tina's house. We held hands all the way, and he made a big deal out of kissing me goodnight, although I'll never understand how he could stand my vomit-tasting mouth. I woke up the next morning feeling like elephants had been doing the Watusi on my forehead, and like I was walking on my eyelids. Tina's mother wanted me to go someplace with her. I got washed up and dressed. "What kind of jewelry do you like?" she asked me. "I don't know," I said. "I guess I like rubies because they are my birthstone." "Oh no, you look like a girl that's made strictly for diamonds." "Really?" I asked, flattered. "Oh yeah, diamonds are a girl's best friend, and I'm going to show you how to get some." She spent most of the morning and most of the afternoon showing me how to do just that. "You have nothing to worry about," she kept telling me. "Even if they catch you, they can't do nothing to you. You're a kid." I was supposed to go in a store and talk very proper. I was to ask the price of everything and tell the clerk that my father gave me $80 to spend, but that I had some money of my own. Tina and her brother would come in and create a diversion, and while everyone was looking at them, I was to put the biggest earrings I could get in my mouth and under my tongue. When we got to the store, I thought I was going to die of fright. I acted like I didn't know Tina and her brother, and went in as planned. The store was pretty crowded, and I went into my act. I felt so scared. I felt like I was having hot flashes. At first, the salesman acted like he didn't want to show me anything, but when I told him about the $80 and my extra money, he hurried up and pulled out trays. I held them up, saying, "Do you think she'll like these? Do you think she'll like these better?" Then, all of a sudden, Tina and her brother came running into the store. They were laughing real loud, chasing and grabbing each other. I almost forgot what I was supposed to do because I was so busy watching them. Then I remembered, and when I saw that no one was watching, I picked up the biggest earrings I saw and put them into my mouth. "I don't see anything Mommy would really like," I said. "Maybe I'll come back later." I started walking to the door. I just knew that man was going to call me back. "Miss," someone called. I felt like dropping to the floor. I looked out of the corner of my eye and saw that it was another salesman calling someone else. I walked out of the store, turned the corner, and ran. I was halfway to Tina's house before they caught up with me. The earrings were still in my mouth. "Did you get over?" Tina asked me. I looked at her almost as if I didn't know her. "Did you cop or not?" she asked impatiently. Finally, I spit the earrings out into my hand. "Shit," said Tina's mother. "Them's pretty numbers there. I like them myself." As it turned out, the earrings were for pierced ears, and my ears weren't pierced. "Sell them to me," Tina's mother said. "I'll give you $20 for them." "It's a deal," I told her. I was glad as hell to get $20. I didn't care about no diamond earrings, and I needed some money to get away and try to find a job. I was convinced that I wasn't cut out to be no thief. That night, we went out to celebrate. Tina's mother had given me $20 plus $2 extra for good work, and she had also given me a pretty gold-colored dress and nice black shoes. I was dressed up, clean as a board of hell, and we all had some money in our pockets, and were ready to do it. We looked for Tyrone, but he wasn't home. We walked all around the projects until we found him. He was at the house of these twins, Jesse and James, or something like that. They all went downstairs for some kind of meeting. Everybody said they were going to fight. They were at war with another gang, the Bishops, and one of their members had gotten messed up by the Bishops. Finally, the meeting was over, and Tyrone came and hung out with us. But it wasn't the same. He spent the whole night talking about what he was going to do to the Bishops. And if he wasn't talking about that, he was talking about the fights he had. And if he wasn't talking about that, he was talking about the fights he had had before. Gang fights, school fights, fights, etc. It seemed like his whole life he was fighting. Why? I kept thinking. Why was he so into fighting? The question was on the tip of my tongue, but I just couldn't bring myself to ask it. I tried to imagine the future, Mrs. Tyrone, whatever his name was, and the children, me, packing his lunch as he went to fight with the Bishops. Somehow, the picture didn't work. I was tired of this adventure. I was ready to go home, whatever the consequences.
Context of White Supremacy. We'll pick up Chapter 5 for next week. Chapter 5. Anywho, folks would like to participate. The number again, 760-569-7676. The code is 564-943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. We will hit the phone lines. Everybody who dialed in with a hand up, your line should be open. We should have about a half hour before the conclusion. No one had any thoughts from the chapters we just heard?
Yes. I can see what in her early background on what kind of prepared her for, once she was in greater confinement and also being in the oft-times intimidating atmosphere around race soldiers. She was, getting kind of like off-hand training, just from the standpoint of the atmosphere where the system of racial white supremacy puts its victims. Not unusual in the quote-unquote household where the mother and father are in conflict. And in turn, normally what takes place is it does have a direct bearing on offspring in a lot of cases. I think she said somewhere during that time that she was quite fortunate not to be in any serious trouble. I think I know what she was talking about. Heck, she could have gotten killed in a lot of different instances based on what she was doing at the time, going off on her own. She could have been no more than, early teens, early to mid-teens maybe during that time. And that type of navigation is not really the safest to do. But nevertheless, going up to the present in the book, I can see on how that background actually, contribute towards being prepared somewhat as far as not being shocked by some things. I guess they call it learning the streets. I guess that's kind of like a phrase for it. But once again, Miss Shakur, in my estimation, really got the most out of it based on when the two different readings about her present versus her past, they kind of like, in my opinion, match. From that standpoint. If I'm getting some understanding on what I'm babbling about right now. But anyway, I'll listen to others. Thank you.
May I be heard?
I hear you.
Okay. I just wanted to comment on how her perceptions of the world were through watching television. And in the previous reading, we talked about she talked about how when she was in prison and the guard did not want to give her a newspaper, but encouraged them to, watch television. And I thought about Dr. Welsing, how she talked about reading is more important than watching television, and how Assata was asking for, books and things of that nature. And while she was growing up at home, her views of black people were just what she saw on television. Dr. King, the struggles that were going on at that time, and the president, Eisenhower, and her reality of black people was, pretty, I guess, typical for that time. But, for her to persevere through all of that is amazing, her revolutionary strength. Because, we know that, as the previous caller talked about, how adolescents go through things and they hit the streets. Well, usually they hit the streets with gangs and they're doing all these other things. And she did meet some pretty unsavory characters, but she had enough in her background to, people who told her, you got to be better. You are the vanguard. You can't do this. You can't do that. Her grandmother and her family members and her aunt who showed her another side of life. So she had to, weigh all of that in the balance, and, she had the strength to persevere through that. So I thought that was interesting. And poor Joe, ugly and black, poor Joe. But, like I said, she had enough in her to realize that she could never use those two words, again, to hurt her people. And that's all I had. I'll mute my line.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I just wanted to share the part that stuck out to me, page 67 in the book, where she was talking about, I guess this is the part where she was starting this trial, and she talked about how she said most of the black people excused themselves on the grounds of hardship when they were
looking for jury selection. And it just made me reflect on the time when I was, more confused and had a lot of self-hatred, and I was really just focused on, my comfort and how I remember I had lied personally to get out of jury duty because of how much of a quote-unquote inconvenience it would be to me. And I just remember how at that time, I was just so selfish about how, the inconvenience for my own personal, situation. And now, I have a client that is an attorney, and, how important it is for Black people and non-white people to serve as jurors on juries. Because based off of, even just with this and just the trials and things that we see in modern times now, how we are not reflected in the court system where they're doing jury selections because we just don't see the value of representing. And it's just so important for us to serve on juries. It was so interesting when I read the part where she said they were thinking about, or they were moving the trial to another city, but the other city that they moved the trial to, or they were going to move, look for jury, it was no Black people. And so I just want to stress to us, and just to make sure we share with non-white people how important it is for us to serve on juries. I don't necessarily expect much from this quote unquote law system and the law, but we definitely need to be reflected on the jury trials, or the jury, because we know that they are railroading us, so to speak. And if we're not represented, it'll just be more of the same. And so I'm now more committed to if I'm called to be a juror, or just doing my part to at least serve if I'm called, because I remember that time when I deliberately lied. I was just like, I don't have time for this. And it just really struck a chord with me when I read that part on page 67, because it is so important for us to be represented, especially with what's going on today. But that's all I wanted to share, and I'll mute my line.
Thank you kindly for sharing. Appreciate that. Caller at 9400, did you have something you wanted to share as well?
Yes. Yeah, I like what the last caller had to say. And I just think that we have to make a little a way of thinking that rules of thinking that that tells us like a little check mark what we should be doing and what we shouldn't do. Hello?
Oh, yes, ma'am. I can hear you.
Okay. I was hearing something else. And one of the things we have to do is we have to, like we have a Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, things that, we have to do, like why we should be doing jury duty and press up on young people and, in the early age, so when the time comes, they know what their duty is and why. They know their duty is to bring justice, into the world. And so, and how the way are we supposed to do that? And that's, taking the time to be on jury duty, but being educated enough where we have to have money and we have to have careers that we're not financially hardship, because that actually is a reason not to be on a long jury. So we have to make it, understand that, we shouldn't be financially hardship because of the other stuff that the lady brought up in the book, like having trouble with your spouse because of financial hardship. And it's not that we're trying to achieve some kind of goal or standard that, white people have or whatever. We know what we're supposed to be doing. We know why. And then we have to go ahead and we have to make our plans. Now, of course, a lot of times we're not going to hit those plans in the first generation of making them. But we have to keep trying. And no matter what, we compensate. As Nearly Fuller says, we have to compensate. And we have to keep trying until we get to those goals. And because it is important for us to be a part of juries for justice. It is important for us to have functioning families so mothers can stay, in the house of days because they have to counter racism and have children who are focused on justice, on the of the putting justice in this world, and making sure that non-justice is given a harsh blow for us doing the things that we have to do. And I'm so guilty that I haven't done the things that I'm supposed to do, and I know it because I've read Nearly Fuller's book almost, when he first nearly published it, when he first got it out. And I'm still so guilty. And, so that's it. I like this book. I really do like this book, and this was good to have it, in succession the way that we had it right after the Malcolm X book. And thank you. I'll mute my line. Thank you.
Appreciate that as well. Caller 2157, last four digits 2157. Did you have something you wanted to add? Caller 2157, are you just listening, or did you have something you wanted to add?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Hi, Gus. I wanted to make a comment about, I'm going to try not to get nervous. I'm the caller from Ohio, and when I call in, this is my third time, I tend to get very nervous and start to just rant. But I wanted to make a comment about what she was saying about the 1950s sitcoms like Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best, and those images that we grow up and think this is the ideal American family. Those images are false. The greatest person that had an impact on my life out of all of the great civil rights leaders that we have had was Dr. Amos Wilson, because you literally cannot read his books or listen to his lectures and not come away changed. I mean, he touches on everything. And back in the 90s when he lived, he talked about this myth of the American family. He quoted a book called The Way We Never Were. It's by Stephanie Coontz. It's C-O-O-N-T-Z. And in that particular book, she exposes the American family for what it is. America has always had children out of wedlock. During all of this piety, colonial America, there were large swaths of children born out of wedlock, mainly to married men. And this trend has continued. During the 50s, there were lots of children born out of wedlock. As a matter of fact, it tripled between 1948 and 1955, I believe. I tried to find my copy of my book, The Way We Never Were, before calling in, but I can't locate it. But throughout America's history, I mean, this thing of having children out of wedlock that seems to, where they seem to only target black women, is largely racism. And if you look at the top rich European countries, I'm talking about Sweden, Norway, Iceland, 50 to 60% of their children are born out of wedlock. I mean, you can go online and look this up. But you're not going to hear them vilifying white women. As a matter of fact, they don't have the crime and the problems that they try to associate black people with. That's because they care about their children. And they have set up social programs to take care of their children. So to make it appear that it's something inherently wrong or that black women are some kind of out of control monsters that are having children but no, this is something that has been going on throughout the history of the world. And America is a very big hypocrite. So that's basically what I wanted to say. Those images during the 50s, I think it was like 25% of American families that actually may have lived like Leave It to Beaver. There was a large amount of poverty in the 50s. It was a lot of bills in Congress being discussed for juvenile delinquency. All of this during the 50s. So I think that's what I want to say.
Outstanding. Appreciate that as well. Folks can, excuse me, check on that book as well. The Way We Never Were, American Families and the Nostalgia Trap, Stephanie Kuntz. Don't be nervous, callers. Did we miss anybody?
Thank you.
For sure. Anybody with us who has not been able to get a thought in the second time around?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
How you doing? Thomas Smith again. Just wanted to make some few points from the reading. That was excellent what the lady just said, because I was born in the 70s, and they paint that picture of the 50s and the 60s like white people were just living it up, just the glamour ever. And then when you read things, you see it's pretty much the opposite. They were living in the projects back then. Back to the Mark X's thing, man, doesn't he look strikingly like John Muhammad? I mean, it's like, wow, when I went to his wiki page where it has the also C section, listed there is the DT Sniper thing. I said, very interesting. He had the silver hat and everything on. I think she figured out the slavery catch. She hit it on the head with the 13th Amendment. It's all about the money, and that's why the prisons are filled with black people. And I just wanted to add that, the first black president, Mr. Bill Clinton, that's how most black people view him. He looked more black people up than anyone in history. And now his is coming out talking about she's going to end the prison era. Don't believe it at all. The jury selection, I agree with the callers that it's sad that, we're usually in a position where we can't serve on a jury. And, I wish that we all would, especially on these criminal cases. And just a tidbit, they have posted an article in a few papers this month that Louisiana, the great state of Louisiana, because they didn't want to have black jury. They thought that having black jurors would mess up the system. They went to a 10-2 rule, so they don't need a unanimous jury there anymore. Just need 10 of the 12 people to agree with it. So they have a couple of blacks, no problem. The Elvis part from earlier, that was also good. Her mother bought her the Elvis button, or her grandmother, and he said he only wants blacks to buy his products, pretty much.
And shine his shoes.
All the white. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I just said, and shine his shoes. I think that was the other part.
Shine his shoes, exactly. And then I think, all the products, that these white people endorsed over the years when I was a kid that I would go crazy for, especially those wrestlers, man. And I would imagine most of them are racist. But, I was crazy for Hulk Hogan and Macho Man and all that. And what a fool I was. And also, I remember crying because my mother wouldn't buy me the Dukes of Hazzard car, because they had the Confederate flag on it. And I didn't understand then, what it meant. But she would not buy that car for me for nothing. And I'd watch the commercials now, and I'm like, they keep blocking out that flag on the top of that car. I'm just waiting for one of them to show it. I don't know if you know those auto trade commercials they keep showing. But that's all I had to add. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else with us who didn't get to share the second time around?
May I add something about?
Yes, ma'am.
About the, I always, one thing about the prison, I always try to remind people, sleep is so important to you, and it is so easy to make you crazy and off your game by just messing with your sleep, and white people seem to know that. always keep that in mind, that your sleep in particular is so important to you. And then the other thing is that, we blame ourselves for so much because white people are so good at lying. I mean, we blame ourselves for not being on juries. The only way they'd even have your name in that jury selection is if they were sure that you were completely unconscious. Okay, so you have an opportunity to get on a jury, but only before you know what's going on. Because if there is anything in your history, anything, any rumor, any place that you've lived, anything at all, you're not going to even get called for jury selection. I mean, you're not going to be on the jury. That's what I'm trying to tell you. They're trying to tell you the reason you're not on the jury is because you're such a bad human being and you make up lies and all this other stuff. The only reason they called you the first time was because they knew you didn't know what you were doing. But I have made it a point to try and get on a jury. I have never been on a jury. I am over 50 years old. I have gone to judges. I have gone to commissioners. I have gone to the tax office. I am like, why have I never been on a jury? This is a bucket list thing for me. The 2 times that they put me on when I screamed loud enough, when I got to the courthouse, there was a sign on the outside saying jury selection is canceled. I don't think any of you are ever going to get on a jury as long as you're conscious, and they are trying to make it you think that it's because you're irresponsible, because you don't understand. You're not getting on those juries. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. Oh, and the last thing about Queens, I'm not sure, but now that she's talking about Queens, I think I may have integrated Forest Hills in the 90s. You always think of Jews as being so, well, maybe just a little bit better than the average white person. At least we do, which is a big lie. Because I am pretty sure that when I went to Forest Hills in Queens in the 90s, I think I was the first black person because all of the guys who were working in the basement parking cars were watching out for me. So it's just to say, you don't appreciate just how racist some groups are and how good they are at lying and making you think, well, maybe I'm not as bad as those white people over there. But that's not true. I think Jews may be phenomenally racist. Because that's 90 is a long time before integration. Forest Hills, Queens, that's a long time. Anyway, that's it. That's all I wanted to add.
Appreciate that, Karma. Quick notes I had to get in. We have about 4 minutes, just things that stuck out. I thought it was interesting, her passage on page 65, where she talked about white people being afraid of black people. We're kind of at the end, so that might be one people can ponder about, and we can kind of evaluate as we roll through the book. But I definitely, that's something I know we've spent a lot of time talking about and hearing different people's theories and ideas, but it seemed like she spent a few lines that was slightly larger than some of her other paragraphs, where she talked about white people being afraid of black people and why they would be afraid, considering all that they have done to black people and how we would function in their position. But I definitely thought that was worth noting. I think the slavery thing you all already touched on. I thought Mr. Reed would definitely appreciate that. Her commentary on page 73 about the difficulties of black males and females having constructive partnerships. I thought that was extremely important to just kind of get that. I think that's something that we still continue to spend a lot of time kind of griping and fussing with each other and what have you, and just not realizing that this system is designed for black people to not have strong, healthy families, for black people to not have constructive, healthy relationships, that is an integral aspect of what this system is designed to neutralize. I thought she just phenomenal analysis. Just some things that reminded me with the movie that she talked about and going to the theater. I don't know if folks listening way back, but The Warmth of Other Suns, Isabel Wilkerson, phenomenal text. I think that would probably be in Gus's top 10. She has a scene with one of the characters, if memory serves. That was a while back, but if memory serves, I think it was Dr. Robert Pershing Foerster was talking about going to the movies in Louisiana. And it was the exact same scene where they, this walk of shame, you got to go up the stairs, urine-filled stairs, and they sell you stale treats, if anything at all, and you're way away from it. It was the exact same scene, just in terms of how widespread that was and the influence of television. I think that's something that's come up regularly on this program that we've talked about, and how that contaminates the way that we think about whites and ourselves. I think karma, you and I think we were having the conversation during Malcolm X's autobiography about once he was in greater confinement, and how reading and how you can really have some quiet time to study and think and reflect and get a deeper understanding of things. And I think we were talking about how that environment has been so disrupted that it's not that quiet place that you can sit and think. And I think you can even see it in the gap from Minister Malcolm, him talking about his time being in prison, like in the late 40s. And then with Assata Shakur, so this is roughly 25, 30 years apart, that even then they're restricting her access to newspapers and books and what have you. Folks are watching TV, folks are reading the radio, doesn't talk about, serious study going on in the facility. Let me see. We're right at the end. I guess I'll if one person has like a sentence that they need to get in before we wrap up, we can do that. If not, we're pretty much at the end, so we can just save the rest for next week. Anybody got like one pressing quick sentence they needed to get in before we wrap up? If not, that's fine. Folks are satisfied. We will continue. Take a note if you are listening. Just jot it down for next week. I feel like it's so many things that could be kind of discussed, dissected. Poor Joe, I think one of the callers mentioned the young black male suitor, ugly and black. Poor Joe. But yeah, we'll be back next week. It's the beginning of chapter 5. That's what we'll be picking up next Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, for session number 3. Looking like we'll probably be on this book for another 4 to 5 weeks, if I had to guess. Maybe one more, but about a month or so. So buckle in. I hope folks are enjoying it. If you want to get a hard copy to follow along, please do so. Again, chapter 5. We'll be back tomorrow. Compensatory call in, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Workplace racism, news and events from the past 7 days. We'll be looking forward to checking in with everybody. Again, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Tune in roughly 24 hours from now for folks. Again, under the conditions of white supremacy, I would strongly encourage sobriety. I know folks, it's getting warm. Summertime is coming up. Folks want to be outside having a blast. I intend to do the same, but be codified. I would encourage, definitely, if you're going to be behind the wheel, no drinking, no consuming intoxicants, even if you're going to be a passenger or a pedestrian. If you got to consume, get to one spot and stay there, certainly not in the presence of white folks. And I would even be cautious about the other victims that you're around. A lot of times when we are under the influence, we end up having a lot of unnecessary problems and conflict. Just really be mindful of all of that. And again, I cannot stress enough, under conditions of white terrorism, sobriety would be best. That's it. Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest forms of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice as soon as possible. Context of White Supremacy. Signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my condition. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.